as they are on the schedule, or are we going to go through, since we have a big audience? Zoning first.
Grab my round notebook. You don't have to refer to any notes.
If you need to look at it.
And you're good.
This was a little bit.
I have some blank pages, but you know, if I want to write down something.
So they just learned this too?
Gary taught us all.
Gary did? Awesome.
I don't think we don't appreciate it.
We do appreciate Gary. All right. Oh, wow. That is really nice. So it creates a slip resistance.
And there's adjustable if you like it.
Does that work tonight?
Depending on how slanted you like it.
Yeah.
All
nice.
set? Hi, good evening. Welcome to the Planning Board of March 6th, 2020. I will entertain a motion to open the public hearings.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? For the benefit of the public who is here, we will first take care of a few administrative items. We will have the public hearing, the initial public hearing for 25 to 35 Main Street, and we are aiming to start the zoning articles at 8:30, and that will be the rest of the meetings, the zoning articles. Also, for the benefit of the public, if you are here for the continued public hearing for the solar special permit and stormwater management permit for 71 Franklin Road, Seaboard Solar, they have requested a continuation to April 13th. So that's going to be the first piece of business. So if you're here for that only, you are always welcome to stay, but I thought that I would let you know if you are here for that. Okay, why don't we get that one taken care of? Seaboard Solar has requested a continuance until April 13th, so I will entertain a motion to do that.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any questions, any comments? All those in favor signify.
Sorry. I added it to the folder. I don't know if you saw it. It got sent to me today, but he did give an update as to why they were continuing
Oh,
and
no,
what the
I
deal
did not
is.
see it.
Yeah, so it was just a quick email. I'll bring it up. So they're revising the plans to address comments from the Conservation Commission and the peer review engineers and the fire department and neighbors. And then they're addressing those, and they're going to revise the plans for all of it, resubmit, and then come before the planning board and the Concom in April.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, so.
Could I just add?
Yeah.
Should we mention that there's a town meeting citizens petition about this property? Maybe we should have that document in our folder for next time.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah.
There's a citizens petition related to this property. Sorry, there's a citizens petition related to this property at town meeting. So I wondered if maybe that could be in our folder for next time, so we're aware. It's not something we have to vote on.
Right. Do you know any of the top level details?
It's to purchase the land. The town will purchase the land.
Yeah, town purchases. Okay. All right. That would be the top level details. Okay. So I'm happy to have that in front of us. It will be distinctly separate from the
Right,
special
it's not
permit conversation. All those in favor of continuing this those public hearings to April 13th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. All right. John, take us through the administrative items. The Form K lot release.
Is Todd here? Oh, all right. So they want to release Lot A23, which is the part of the Northwest Villages standard lot release. And the board needs to vote to allow that. And then there also is the restricted land covenant, and the board needs to vote to allow the chair to sign on behalf of the board.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I have a process question. What happens if we don't approve that tonight?
The lot doesn't get released.
Does it get re-reviewed at a later point in time, or?
It depends on what would happen. If the board just didn't sign and continued the request, then it would just go until the next meeting. If they said they're not going to sign, then that would raise a different issue. I think there would have to be a reason why the board wouldn't sign.
So my concern is just with regards to, and I'm not sure what the current status is, but I'm a little apprehensive about continuing the development process without the developer being current on his payments to the town. So,
Hold on one second, yep.
You, Todd? You can just come up and sit at the table.
yeah, and at the least, I guess I'd just like to have some confirmation as to when those payments will be made and something to give us some confidence, because I think they're largely, I'm not sure what the relative, when they were due, but I'm just a little bit concerned that we continue to move along when there's outstanding payments to be made.
Go ahead, introduce yourself.
My name is Todd McDowell, work for Legacy Farms. We are aware of the payments. We had a meeting with Norman and Ray back in the beginning of January, and we submitted some information and a proposal to them, and we agreed at that meeting to engage Judy Barrett, and this was back in January 8th maybe. And I know discussion has been going on with Norman and Judy since then, and we're still waiting to see a proposal from Judy to update some of the fiscal analysis items that we discussed at that meeting. So we've been kind of in a hold pattern for a couple months waiting for that as well. But we have every intention of making the payments. We always just, there was some discussion on the exact amounts of those.
So if I can just confirm, so you've been waiting since approximately January 8th for someone from the town to give you an update?
Well, no, we agreed that we were going to engage Judy Barrett together to do an update on the fiscal analysis, and yes, we've been waiting since then.
Who was your meeting with, Norman and?
And Ray,
Ray. The town council.
yes.
Through the chair,
Yes, Ray.
can you explain Judy's role in the process for the people here and
Yes.
viewing at home?
Judy Bear is a fiscal analysis consultant for the town that did the original fiscal consulting on this back 13 years ago.
Long ago.
Yeah, long ago. And there was a lot of a very different world back then, back in 2012, 13. And there was a lot of assumptions made. Now there's real hard data. It's something we wanted to take a look at and revisit. And, you know, it allows for that in the HTA. There is an allowance for looking at that again. And we requested that.
So would it be appropriate to put a condition on this approval that, can't do that?
It's an endorsement of the form. It's not an approval with a decision.
But we could continue it, you said, to, like, do we think we'll have an update from Norman?
So we're kind of all struggling with this. I know you guys are grappling with it as well. And we are in great company. The entire town has got an elevated level of interest in this as well. So we really want to be partners in this. We're not trying to be, difficult about it. But would it be would you be comfortable coming back to our next meeting? And
Well, I will say we initially started this conversation with Norman, I think back in October. So this is really, we've been waiting anxious to get this resolved as well. And, we really hope it doesn't slow down the project just because it hasn't been, we have not been a reason for the slowdown. We've been trying to move this along.
So, not to be argumentative, Todd, I think that some of these payments have been in arrears since prior to October's conversations. I just think that everybody has responsibility in this, and maybe we could come back in 2 weeks and we could work to get a status from Norman, and you guys can do your best to get your status so that we can all.
Well, we've been trying to work on this for a while, and usually we don't get much of a response, but, we've been trying to get it moving. We know the town would like the funds, and we'd also just like to, have the fiscal update per the HCA, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
been a slow process.
Well, we're interested in that as well. I think the voters at large are interested in it as well. So my personal feeling, we'll take a vote, is that we don't want to hold you up for no good reason, but this is a pretty good reason to at least say, can we talk again in 2 weeks with everybody, bringing forward their best up-to-date information on where we are. So that's my feeling, but.
And if I could just echo, I think that I'd like to hear from
Judy Barrett.
from Judy and Norman on where we are in the process as well.
Yeah, I have no idea if anybody, we have no insight into whether or not that engagement has even happened.
Yeah, so as far as I know, there hasn't been any agreement between the town and Judy Barrett to undertake this at this point.
So that's a piece we really want
That
to
is
know.
a big piece.
Yeah, yes.
Point of
We have to get a
clarification.
proposal out there to get her to sign.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. It could have happened and we just don't know it. I don't know.
Point of clarification, Judy's efforts reviewing could change the amount of money that is paid to the town, is that correct?
I'm not quite clear on that. I'd have to refer to Roy for that.
So I would agree, I would be more comfortable continuing this until, and that gives us a better chance to understand what's happening from the town perspective, and
Yeah,
I don't
and
think 2 weeks
we'll
is gonna
do
make or
our
break this
piece
either.
to
Okay.
well, just make sure that we get a status from our counterparts at the town,
All right, I appreciate
at
that.
least. Okay, so is everybody comfortable waiting for the next meeting is
March 23rd.
March 23rd, so it's just 2 weeks,
Okay.
okay? So do we have to vote to continue it to then, or no, we'll just put it back on?
It wouldn't hurt to. It's not a hearing,
Okay.
but it wouldn't hurt to just have that on the record.
So I will entertain a motion to reconsider the Form K lot release that was on tonight's agenda at our meeting on March 23rd. And at that time, Legacy Farms will do their best to have their updates, and we will do our best to have our counterparts on the town have updates on either the fiscal analysis, the payments that are due, whatever the status is, whatever status is we can agree on.
All right, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you very much.
So moved.
Oh,
So moved.
all those in favor?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. All righty.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, through the chair.
Yes.
Just wanted to point out that Mr. McDowell has also submitted a letter with updated timing. It's in the folder.
Yes.
If everyone saw that.
Why don't you go through that for us since you're here? Yeah, that's
Happy to.
all. Thank you. Oh, you you didn't trust me to share.
Through the chair, this looks like it's on the west side of Legacy Farms North Road. Is this the first building that's happening over there, I think, first development?
I don't know.
It's in the Northwest Villages. There's already construction having taken
At
place.
Aspen Way Road?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
So they've already started there.
Okay.
And then, so he also prepared a, actual timing by month.
Okay.
So this is the schedule by month.
We actually switched the steel fabricator. We got that approved by the town because switching the fabricator for the one they requested was, it cut off about 2 months of timing. It's just there's a huge backlog and making traffic light signals, I guess. And that's, there's a lot of back and forth between VHB and Beta. So by finally, when it got agreed to, we ordered it right away. And this is what the timing looked like, unfortunately.
So
But-
this is for the traffic light, this whole thing is for the traffic?
Yes.
Okay. And so, just for the public's information, if you can't see any better than I might be able to, it should be fully operational by July or August of 2020, according
Yes.
to the schedule.
And through the chair, does it look like the actual construction is kind of starting in April? So
Probably after. the
Yes, we
marathon.
would make sure it's after the marathon.
You know, if we have it. Just joking, just kidding. Small bit of humor there.
they're gonna have to be released one at a time. They can't go in a group.
I know, they have to be 6 feet apart from each other. All right, anything else you wanted to tell us on any updates or anything?
Right after the marathon, we'll also be starting that sidewalk to connect the portion that has not connected yet.
Yep.
So we'll be
Okay,
starting that right
and
after
what
the
is,
marathon.
what is the estimated completion on the sidewalk?
Off the top of my head, my guess is.
It was on there,
it was
the
on
last
there.
one he pulled up, it was mid-April to mid-May.
Yeah,
It was up here?
yeah, I was gonna say about a month.
Okay.
Good catch, Mary.
Okay, light.
Which folder is that
And it seems we're having so much fun catching up.
It's like 2020 is a
What about the road?
So we've reached out, and Peter Mezzett, who's actually doing the landscape planting, we've also asked him to help fill those potholes that are existing currently. So he's gonna have one of his subs do that for us while, hopefully it's already started, because we asked him last week.
Okay.
And if it's not done this week, we'll get out there ourselves and do it.
Okay, and you have submitted everything that you need to submit to the town for town meeting for the road
I believe so,
acceptance?
and we are doing the planting now, and then once that's done, we're gonna pave it and stripe it and get it all ready to go.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
Just want to clarify, he submitted his plans, but now it has to go to the select board next, and then it'll come back to us for a
Correct. So
recommendation?
Select Board is meeting on that on April 7th. They will refer it back to the Planning Board for a recommendation after that meeting, and the Planning Board will have, I think, 45 days to provide a recommendation to the Select Board.
Select board, April 2nd, you said?
Chair,
Seventh.
Seventh,
Just for
okay.
clarification, this is
Yes.
Legacy Farms North.
Legacy Farms North Road, yeah. The bypass road that we're working to try and accept at town meeting.
You know, just regarding that manhole that has some water coming out of it,
Okay.
we've been working, because Eversource owns that manhole, so we've been working with them to get in there and seal it.
They're so cooperative.
It's been, we've been trying since last summer, and they won't let us access it ourselves or our subs, that they actually have to go in and do the work. So we hopefully will get that done as soon as possible. We're really pushing them on it. It's just really getting in there and sealing the inside so there's water going inside it.
Where is the Eversource manhole? Where is that? on
Near the
that?
bridge?
Near the bridge.
At the bottom of the hill.
Yeah, the bottom. Yeah, there's two.
And there's only one?
There's two.
Of course, there's
There's
two.
two, but one is really.
Yeah, one's worse than the other.
Are they both, do they both need attention though?
Yes, I think so.
Can I say,
Yeah.
since Mr. Paradis is here nodding his head in the
Oh.
background,
I couldn't see you because you're behind Todd, yeah.
I guess I just want to make sure that whenever I hear sealing, that makes me a little nervous, because sealing, like at the end of the day, there's some pressure that's causing
Yep.
that water to come up through it. And so I just wanted to hear from, I don't know if you've reviewed it or not, but I'd love to hear if you think that whatever is being proposed is going to be a durable solution for this, this leak.
You're right.
So, we've not actually seen the proposal for.
Okay.
This is what, so this is what Eversource had told us, and, you know, if we can get in there and take a look and there's a different option, we'd be happy to consider something else.
Because we don't know if it's coming from the conduits itself or the gravel that it's typically placed in. All of the soils up there are pretty the transmissivity of the water in that soil is very low. So when you provide a nice, clean, granular backfill and sand to provide a passage for that water, what's likely happen is the upper uplands, and there's some sort of connection there. And anytime the groundwater rises, the water just comes up out of it. So I don't know if, we haven't seen any inspection and figure out why it's happening. So we
Turns
just
into a
observed it
natural
every
stream.
spring The last 3 or 4 years.
So, and I'm asking, I'll ask you, I realize it's hard on a hypothetical basis, but have you seen some type of sealing exercise? Have you seen that work in other similar situations in the past? Is that, in your eyes, a potential solution, or is this the kind of thing that we should have reviewed in more detail? Because I guess what I don't want to do is have this sealed and then come next year it's leaking again, and now it's the town's responsibility to deal with and not the developer.
Yeah, I until we figure out exactly where that water's getting in there and how it's, because if it's in the gravel, then you'd have to dig a trench across it and block it with some sort of clay, bentonite stuff, to prevent that from reaching the manhole. If it's in the conduit itself, you'd have to either TV it or find some way to fill. I don't know if there's a leak up the upper manhole, there's gaps in the pipe or conduit, so it's hard to say without using my x-ray vision.
Nope, that's all.
Jane had a comment.
I agree with you, and it could be that we need to put a drainage pipe in there.
It could be.
One side or the other.
Oh, yeah.
That's a possibility.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Well, but that's a minor problem. I mean, we need
Yeah,
to.
that'd be an easy solution, yeah.
Okay, so that would be another open thing that we need to check off our list. Anybody else really quickly? Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. He was younger the last time I saw him. My 3-year-old is now in college, so there you go, right? I will entertain a motion on the minutes of January 13th.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'll entertain a motion on the minutes of January 27th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'll entertain a motion on the minutes of February 10th.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Yes! 3 sets of minutes. Nice job.
We're done? Go.
Okay, yeah, no, not quite. All right, if we have the applicant for 25 to 35 Main Street, please come forward.
Is this supposed to be connected? Is this supposed to be connected, or do I have to?
While they're setting up, good news, we're on time so far, but
Because I
we do
went-
want to stop, we do have a hard stop at 8:30 to move on
Here?
to the zoning articles, which we can get through.
I went to the 23, and it says it's open, and it says it's not
Yeah.
connected. Should I be able to connect it?
Yeah, you should. Oh, because your iPad's not connected to the internet.
We're on time.
Please take a moment to introduce yourselves and your project.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'm Chuck Joseph, one of the principals in the development of the Hopkins Village Center. Dan Campbell is our engineer, and Alex Sikorsky is the architect. So we are here to present to you kind of an overview to begin with, and if that's the outline that you'd like to have us proceed with.
Indeed.
Okay. So we became involved with this project a while back, and at the time, there was an approved shovel-ready project on the site. And Peter and Charlie, the 2 guys who own the property, we went back and forth on this, and they left it up to us as to what we wanted to do. And upon looking at it, and really, having been around the town for a while and had some experience here, it struck me that it was just too intense a project for this site, for our liking. It was approved, it was ready to go, we could get in the ground, but it was a 45,000 square foot 3-story building, retail, office, and condominiums. It had over 100 parking spaces, et cetera, with under-building parking. And at that point, we stepped back and said, didn't make a lot of sense to us. So We engaged in a different design process. We immediately contacted Dan because Dan was the engineer on that project that got approved. So he was most familiar with the site and could really get us up to speed quickly. Long story short, where we are right now is it's kind of a three-tiered project. The two antique buildings at 25 and 35 Main Street will remain there in their current form. We have been to the Historic District Commission already. We've received their blessing with the note that we go back to them with final landscaping and lamp design and things to make sure it fits in with what's going to happen with the downtown corridor project. Those two buildings are currently under contract because the current occupant is selling them along with the rest of the parcel. Immediately behind those two buildings, let me backtrack for a second. So I had been in discussions with Norman for a long time about how to work in a municipal parking lot downtown somewhere, and we had been chatting about this, that, and I had had some success with the Hopkins Center for the Arts in a public-private co-venture, and I thought, well, maybe, we'll see how it goes. So Dan designed it, and it worked out really well, where we're able to construct parking for the buildings at 25 and 35 that will be relevant to them alone, and in addition to that, get 30-plus parking spaces for municipal parking lot immediately behind them. And then in the rear of the lot, we started out with 16 condos, and we're down to 9. But that seems to be the way that it's going to go. It makes the most sense to us. We have 5 standalone units and 2 duplexes of 4 units for a total of 9. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I'm certainly glad to answer any questions. We did get Beta's responses to the application on Friday, and Dan has had a chance to look at those, and we are happy to answer some of the comments that they have in there as well.
Okay.
Yes, and we got design review.
Okay. Do you want to just capture design review comments now, or do you want to hold on?
Yeah. So there's 3 main topics that we got back from design review. One was staggering of the garage doors, especially on the duplex. We didn't want that building to just look like a sea of garage doors in terms of the facade design. So we're stepping those garages per their comment. Coloration, they were concerned about. They'd like to see a little bit of variety in color, so we're looking at 3 color schemes right now that kind of fit in with the surrounding context, and those will get revised later down the road when we get towards final drawings. And landscaping, which Dan has addressed per their comments in this revised site plan.
Okay. All right, so just so the public and you know the process, what we usually do from here is when you have introduced your project, we go to our staff, and then we will go to our consultant, and then the next step is to invite planning board members and members of the public to contemplate any additions to the agenda if there are some, so we know what's in front of us. Okay? So John.
So I'll start off by saying the scope of this board's review is solely for the parking lot and the access drives. The residential portion is not to be reviewed for the site plan. Residential uses are exempt from site plan review, and that is being reviewed as a special permit by the Board of Appeals. So the scope of the planning board review is just this parking lot, and these access ways. This side of the lot is not.
So can I just ask a clarifying question? The old permit is expired, and that, so it doesn't even apply.
Does not apply.
Okay, that's all I want to know.
So this is essentially a brand-new
Yep.
proposal.
Okay, and we get to talk about the parking lot and the driveways.
Yes.
Understood.
So in terms of zoning, it appears that everything conforms to the dimensional setbacks, those types of things. There were some comments from the Board of Health, nothing substantial. There were comments from the Design Review Board. They just went over those.
The Board of Health wouldn't even play for us, right? Their comments would be for the Board of Appeals.
Correct.
Because we don't have any right to talk about the residential
Correct.
part. Right, okay.
Correct.
All right.
but, so they are going to have town parking here and here.
Excuse me, through the chair. John, is there a better view that doesn't show all the drainage and stuff, that kind of just shows the parking lots, or?
I don't think so. Is there a better? That one?
I'm looking at
What's that?
page,
Yeah, I mean, I'm on
C3.
C3, yeah. that's
Yeah,
what I was
C3
looking
is
at.
my layout material sheet.
Is it in the site plan
It doesn't have
set?
color on it, yeah,
Is
in
it
the
in
site plan set.
C3.
Let's just give it a whirl, if now we can go back.
I really like the TV in front of me better. I'm just saying.
I don't know, I guess I'm indifferent. What do you guys think, color versus?
So the municipal parking will be here and here. And I believe maybe this spot, Chuck? Is that one gonna be not municipal parking?
Yeah, we've had conversations with Norman about keeping one of those for the building at 35.
So this building, Muffin House, is losing its on-street parking because of the Main Street Corridor project. And so there's been talks about potentially giving them a parking spot here or here, one of these spots, and then the town would then give up this spot for the buildings. So this parking and this parking and this parking are for these two uses.
Okay, so it's the
It's essentially this.
lots between the new condos and the buildings.
Wouldn't it be great if the Muffin House could have some designated parking there?
But they won't have to walk that far, I mean, from the back.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I say that too, and nobody swings along with me on that, okay? I'm like, what? I never have a, you know?
So Beta has a significant number of comments, so I'll just give my time up to Phil.
Okay. So I do want to say, and I don't know if the fire chief is here, he is so, he is. I knew you would be. So I want to make sure I say to the fire chief and also communicate to the Board of Health that I assume is not here. We are not going to have a shot at the residential piece. So your information about the sprinkling and so forth, there is some conversation that's going to happen about access, but we're not going to have any way to govern whether the units are sprinkled and so forth. So that's a piece that is going to have to go forward to the Board of Appeals for their consideration.
So Chief Slayman and I talked about that today, and there is a concern of access
Right.
to the site, and it's through the parking lot. So if I understand it correctly, they are, the applicant is in favor of doing residential sprinklers, but you're correct, there is nothing.
Right, so it's just
Under the
it's just a
board's
disconnect between the two
jurisdiction.
boards, and it doesn't have to be a problem, but I just want to make sure that we say something, so. Okay. Okay, so if we can make some space for Mr. Paradis, we'll get his top-level comments.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Phil Paradis with Beta Group. We've been asked to review this on behalf of the town. We did kind of a comprehensive review, realizing this may be used for the Board of Appeals as well. So the comments may or may not apply to this particular situation. So we did, and that was, I didn't understand the breakup of the parking issue, so, but we do, so there are a number of what I would call bookkeeping things that are, so I'm not going to go through all the, you know, a majority of the stormwater stuff is bookkeeping in it, so. But we are, there's a number of, it's a great concept in theory. We just are a little concerned with the size of the spaces. There's predominantly the middle section here is compact spaces. Some of the angled parking spaces do not meet the dimensional requirements. Some of the handicap accessible spaces also may have to, just to make sure that they have the 18-foot width, 18-foot length and such. So I think we just want to see a little bit of work with that. So if this is for this use, these two uses, you know, these are short spaces. So you got some, and you also got a 15-foot aisle here and a 15-foot wide aisle there. So I think there's going to be, I'll defer to the chief on this, but I think there's going to be some issues relative to getting in and around emergency situations and such, getting in and out. So we think at a minimum they should be at least 16 feet wide, but the chief may have a better idea of that. Also think they do have a walkway that comes right up through the middle of the site. It's got a stair on one end. We want to see if they can put an accessible route through there, or I don't know if that's possible, but we wanted to consider that. Relative to stormwater, we need to see some soil tests at the location where they're putting infiltration systems, make sure that there's not an issue with groundwater, and we have an idea what the soil texture is. And there is, the plans indicate a swale kind of in this area where this outlets and swale, it kind of directs flow to this wooden building. So I think it's to better mimic the existing condition. We think there's probably should be a level spreader, just to, I mean, it's not high flows, so we're not expecting that, you know, completely wipe out that building, but just to kind of mimic existing conditions there. Then there's some screening things that our landscape architect thought would be beneficial for screening on the residential side, but I guess that's out of your bullywork. And then between the parking, this parking area and Main Street, so could be some more screening. The lighting also doesn't comply with the height of the luminaires, kind of the uniformity ratio, and then there's some slight spillage on the adjacent lots.
Okay.
So that's kind of the big things. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
huge, but I think the accessibility and the getting in and out of parking spaces. This is also pretty narrow right here. It's 15 foot. It's a two-way drive.
Are the two existing buildings that are going to stay, they're going to be residential still? What are they going to,
Those are offices.
and they're going to stay as they are, but it's part of the sale?
Yes, so this entire parcel, just from a legal standpoint, so you all understand, this is, it's going to end up as two parcels. Maybe I should do it up here, so I can show you.
I don't think it's going to show up on the TV. I can use my cursor.
The original thought process was that the town would sign a 100-year lease on the parking lot. But Norman has expressed the desire to actually purchase the land. So in order to do that, the complexity here is that condominiums require the street frontage in order to be able to build those, so that we cannot break up the parcel into thirds. We would have to take out a middle rectangle according to the contours of the actual municipal parking lot and sell that to the town, keeping two bands of property continuous down each side, so that there is a donut hole, if you will, a square donut hole in the middle that the town would own, and then the building 25 would be a condominium, 35 would be a condominium, and the others.
Should I cue the circus music?
Yeah, he threw a wrench in my plans, very.
So can I ask a very practical question?
Sure.
Was that part of the original town meeting vote?
The discussions that I had were for leasing. The town meeting voted to purchase.
Okay, I can see out of the corner of my eye
Yeah.
that John is
So
nodding.
that's why this legal structure is going to take place.
All right. Okay. So, well, why would we make it simple?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a couple of quick questions, but just because we are going to have to be thoughtful of how we separate this, but because we have the fire chief here.
Sure.
And part of the question is going to have to be access and his feelings, would you just come up and give us a top level, chief? Thank you so much.
Good evening. First off, I think I'd even start by thanking Chuck. He came into my office quite early in the process just to start showing me what some of their intentions were, so that just made it so we could have some dialogue. And the site has a lot going on it, so
Yep.
for me to just be able to kind of give you some feedback of my take in access and safety
Yes.
takes a lot. The part that I mentioned to Chuck was, we've seen it in some of the other projects, when somebody realizes whether it's code or agreement or what gets us to the point when we're talking about some of the safety features. In this case, we talked about residential fire sprinklers. It can help change the conversation, the way the code's constructed commercially or the way it was residentially, just some of the format that I use from past codes. So here, the access issues become simpler for me to comment when I can understand that a property has that life safety protection in it. So then I'm not sitting there saying, okay, where are my exposures? Where are the neighboring houses? How do the setbacks that are maybe going to be given or not impact it? I just mentioned to Chuck, not to twist your arm all the way, but it just makes my work much simpler. Now we're just talking about whatever design you end up with. I'm just going to look to see that there's a swept path, that it gets us close enough, and things like the hammerhead, which are usually something we compromise to, is enough for me because it has these protection features in place.
Right.
So that's kind of the conversation we've had.
Right.
It probably, from what I'm seeing, it probably won't be driven through the building code to require it, but it makes all this site access or what's going on in the site much easier for me to say, hey, overall, I'm good with it as a fire chief. So
Right.
I'm hoping I'm explaining that just at the right level.
Yeah, no, this is varsity level play here because we have two different independent boards, right, that have to work cooperatively, which is kind of why I was making sure I made that comment. And I have every confidence that it can happen. It mostly hinges on the applicant just sealing that deal and making sure that that conversation carries over, because we can't tell the Board of Appeals what to do and wouldn't want to, and vice versa. But the two conversations make the whole work.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have a question for the chief.
Yeah. Oh, hold on one second, Chief, I'm sorry.
If we're at the right juncture.
Well, we aren't really to questions, but he's here, so go ahead.
One of my concerns is are the 5 parts that jut out, maybe that 6 wider part, into the parking lot, which would be town property. So I'm thinking if those could just be pointed out, if these could be trimmed back to the sidewalk line, instead of, to make it easier for emergency vehicles to get in and out and not be a hindrance if they're turning.
Yeah, so what I think I'm looking for, and I think it's still early in the process, is I just wrote one note. There's a swept path analysis that just shows what the final intent will be for us to move through the site. And normally we look for certain widths that we don't have to deal with some oncoming traffic. Again, that doesn't get into the residential piece, but if we're just going around an office part of the piece and whatever this mix is. So I think if we can just show that the apparatus can move through and these protections are in place, then that makes me happy as a fire chief, because again, the residential units are towards the back where I have to get through to get to them. So the pressure of me getting bigger vehicles back there and for more complex types of incidents, if the fire get ahead of us, I need to get more back there. The protection you're putting in holds that problem down, so then I don't have to worry about, if there was plenty of room for access, you could make things bigger, and there probably wouldn't be a need to even have that conversation with me. But what we're trying to do on the site, this is a nice way to have this conversation and maybe make it work for both parties.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. When do you go in front of the Board of Appeals?
Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay.
If I may, Madam Chairperson, Dan Campbell may be able to answer some of the questions that came up from Mr. Paradis and Chief Slamman.
I don't intend to answer. I'll give you the same very high-level
Perfect.
overview that Beta has given so far. Basically, the photometric,
Yep.
we've already redone or had our photometric person, Diorio Associates, do the photometric. He can get down to 15-foot lights. Again, it was a municipal parking lot. We were trying to, use taller fixtures, easier fixtures, especially for the town to fix. But he has changed the fixtures. I do have that plan with me if you wanted to see it. But his concern is the light levels at 20 to 1. To get to those light levels, the town is taking care of approximately 7 times as many lights as we currently show even in the fixed plan. When I go down to the 15-foot fixtures with no light spillage, he says he's at 32 to 1, not 20 to 1.
That's totally going to be a detail we're going to have to talk more about.
So it's just something I wanted to bring up to the board because I'm going to bring it up to Beta. So it's the one thing we were unable to work out. Landscaping, we did plant quite a bit more. So we will provide that detail as well to the planner and staff. And as Beta said, a lot of the drainage comments are housekeeping comments, and we're happy to address those. The swept path is absolutely something we will do. We did it for the initial submission, and primarily the reason that I brought the original now 12, 13-year-old approval with me is that exact comment was 15-foot wide driveways, because that was what was originally approved, because we did swept paths on that. So we will do it on this as well, just to show that the municipal parking lot was designed the same way.
Okay, perfect. We're gonna charge right back at our outlines, so we get some things accomplished for you tonight. We do love a site visit with this planning board. So, is there usually we aim at Saturday mornings at about 9. Is there one coming up that works for you?
One coming up in a few days.
Okay. Is everybody available on?
14th.
Thank you. I can
Yes.
be available on the 14th, I'm sure.
I'm available.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody not available?
Very rarely available on Saturdays. So.
I'm sorry, Deb. But fortunately, you trust your fellow board members.
I do, and I will do a walk. I do go on walks on my own to check out the property and to see what's going on.
Okay, so we will schedule a site walk on Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning. Where is the best place to meet?
Probably parking
Are you buying
behind,
us muffins?
behind 35. Yeah, that's
Sorry.
post-walk. Behind 35.
Okay. And just for the public's benefit, the public is welcome to join us on the site walk. The site walk is not a part of the public hearing process. We post it because we'll all be there, but we don't take testimony. If people, it's a little bit of a, it's not really a gray area, but people ask questions, that's the purpose of the site walk. But if you have details and questions and things that you want to make sure this process captures, you need to say it in this room as part of the public hearing or send it in writing so it's part of the official record. So the public is always welcome to attend. We will gather at 9 a.m. on Saturday, March 14th. That's this coming Saturday, behind number 35 Main Street. And it really can be very helpful to see. We find it always very helpful to see the site. So, okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, we like to. Yes, thank you.
Just a question about our purview and scope. You mentioned parking lot and driveway. Does it include the parking spots for the condos?
No. These? There we go. These?
Right, I would say no, right?
So we're going to try to have, that seems a little confusing to me if we're trying to understand the overall traffic flow without including those, right?
I think that confusing is an excellent word to use in this case.
Through the chair, you can consider the traffic coming out of here, but
Okay.
the design of this is not.
I think that we're all going to have to agree to be a tiny bit flexible about how we talk about this, and a tiny bit careful about how we exercise our purview. So we won't want to be stomping on anybody else's feet, but we will need to understand it too.
And just a quick follow-up, if I may,
Yeah.
for John. So we're to assume also that traffic it's a dead end, right? There's nothing going out the other end?
Correct.
Okay,
And traffic is one way.
I saw that, thank you.
Well, it's two-way here, but it's one way here.
Sorry, where's it two-way?
In the middle.
Where, yeah, in the middle.
Oh, okay.
But it's a circular, enter here, exit here. And there has been discussions as to right turn only out of here.
Which we know how that goes. But you can try. Okay, so what we usually do now is we ask the planning board members if they have anything, and specifically they want to add to this basic agenda that we use for all public hearings. So I will ask around the table if there is. I have two things that I want to add. I just want to understand what it means by regs, if there are regs, what it means to design a municipal parking lot, particularly with the accessibility question. And I think that we would also like to understand whether or not it's our purview to see it through, what it means to have the town buy it and what the process is there. When just how that's happening.
And I would like to just have on there the signage for public parking. And again, I don't know if we need to discuss it specifically if it's under our purview, but I'd just like to make sure we at least address it.
So through the chair, signage is on there. Do you want to wrap it up into that?
It can be.
Add a separate one?
Yep.
And signage visible from the public way in the historic district is reviewed by the historic district commission.
Yeah.
But that they were going to come back for that when they determined signage.
Is that page 19 that we're on?
Yes. Sorry. So that also at least invites, because it couldn't get any more complicated, invites the question about making sure that the public knows that there's public parking and whatever signage complies with the historic district, because
Still needs to be, yeah.
it will be out along the streetscape.
It has to be.
Right?
It has to be
Right.
very visible, yeah.
Normally, we would just request some kind of historical treatment, like but
Okay.
different look than a standard look.
Okay, so that's not gonna be any hang up, okay.
But I can't speak for the board.
No, yeah. Okay, anybody else? Yes, Jane?
One of the engineers mentioned screening. I would just like them to think about maybe pollinators, low-growing shrubbery, flowering bushes, rhododendrons, azaleas, things like that. If you could intersperse them with shade trees. I don't know what you're thinking, but I think might be attractive. It might be a nice,
So we have
attractive.
I have screening down there.
Improve the area.
I put in
landscaping,
pollinators.
landscaping is on the,
Screening 6.14.
Oh, and landscaping is on there too.
landscaping 6.9 and screening 6.14.
I know it's on there, I just.
Yeah,
thought,
no,
well,
yeah,
your
no, I
plans.
appreciate that, yeah,
Yeah, the specific kinds, we will make sure to address those.
yeah, okay.
Just a thought.
Anybody else?
I have one. What about coordination between the corridor project and any kind of street markings? Just ground level, surface?
That's easy. We actually have taken the current 80% drawings, 75% drawings, whatever they were, and they are incorporated in here currently, including utilities, edge of pavement, all of that is in here. So the main street corridor, All of that is incorporated into these drawings as they were presented at the last meeting through the engineering department.
And well, we're really not talking about it, we're just adding to our agenda at this time, but just for our edification, were they as up to date as they needed to be at the time of your last review, or were there some missing pieces?
They were as up to date as they had gone out to the state at that point. So like I said, I think there were 75 or 80% drawings. I can't remember the exact percentage. But as they get updated, we've been updating as well, and we are talking to the engineering department to make sure we are keeping, so if all of a sudden there's a curve in Main Street, we will make sure that's on the drawing.
So I'm going to suggest that we add it to the agenda and not expect it to hang us up.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
And just to clarify through the chair, as far as I know, there's no timing set for the Main Street Corridor project, a start date or anything like that, so it would be tough to coordinate their construction with the Main Street Corridor construction without knowing that information.
Yeah, and I don't think that we would ever contemplate hinging the two things on each other, but having some conversation so that we're all working with the most up-to-date information.
Can we add maintenance to the outline? We're talking about a public parking lot, and there's going to be, looks like some maybe grass areas,
Yeah.
just the pavement material itself, any maintenance that's going to be subject to the town. There's probably a better way to build a parking lot for long-term maintenance than not.
Is snow storage on here?
Yeah, it's 6.6.
Yes, thank you. Yep.
So also through the chair with the snow storage, there has been some talk about where to put it, and there is also talk of the town removing the snow from the parking area, because the snow storage is really for the other uses. So there might not be enough room to store the parking lot snow. So there has been talks of that.
So we have to have two snow storage spots, huh? Is that what you're saying?
What do you mean?
Where will the snow storage be?
So there's
For the
Yeah, they have
condos, for
some-
the residential units,
So
right?
the residential snow storage is here,
Oh, okay. But that wouldn't be,
and then there's, I think this is snow storage here. So it would be this that doesn't necessarily have any snow storage.
yeah?
And so this may have to get removed
Right.
by the town.
Okay, so we just need to know how that's gonna work. Gotcha. Okay. Okay, so for the public's interest, this is when we invite people who have come for this public hearing to come forward, and what we are doing now is adding to the agenda, adding to the discussion items, not necessarily, not having a full discussion of those items. If you're new to the process, please feel free to come to the mic, introduce yourself and your address, and then just what you would like to make sure we put on the agenda for discussion as part of this public hearing. Is there anybody? Yeah, go ahead. Not new to this process, pretty sure?
Dale Van, 25 East Main Street. I actually didn't come for this project, but while I'm here, I'd like to ask the question that there is a handicap parking spot from back there I can't see. Will it be van accessible? Because a lot of times we have parking and it's not large enough for a van to, open up the ramp, and we need extra space for that. And since it looks like there's only one, I'd like to make sure that everybody can use it, including my son.
Indeed.
If I can just add, that's a nice add too, given the slope of Main Street. Van accessible parking is much, much more important in level parking spots, so that might be a good space to accommodate.
Well, this one says it's a van parking space, but, yeah.
This one up in the diagonal.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. welcome.
Hi, Mary.
Mary Arnott, 51 Trace Road. I was just curious about municipal parking hours for this lot and, well, for that matter, any municipal lot that may be in town.
It's a really good question.
We have control.
Well, we just don't know, because I don't know that we've ever done this before, so we're going to have to...
And it's going to be on the outline.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. It's a really good point to bring up. I appreciate that.
If I may ask a second question?
Of course.
Since the town will own the municipal lot, and I assume the access, the driveways in and out of that area. So for the units that will be going up as residential units, how will they be assured that they will, for ever and ever, what they call it, perpetuity or something, be able to have access to their residences?
If I may, through the chair?
Hold on one second. Go ahead, Frank.
Hi, Mary. I believe that town is just purchasing the rectangle in the middle. Chuck referenced it as like a donut hole, and the driveways are owned by the property owner.
That'd be good to know, though.
Correct, that's how we understand it, and the driveways would have an easement for the town to access.
So
and
the
then
town will have the easement.
And then the residences would have an easement over the parking lot to access.
Two-way, right? So that should be a discussion point to have it more.
I think the easement access is an excellent discussion point.
And I'm sure Chuck's figured it out, but I thought I would.
No, I'm sure, it's just that it's important to understand it, particularly from the documentation standpoint, yeah.
And third and final, what, if any, assurances would the residents have that people will not come back into the residential area to park if the parking lot is full? How can that be addressed?
So,
And I'm sure
that's
Chuck's
a
figured
really
that out
good
too.
question, and that's gonna be the Board of Appeals problem to solve. But thank you, Mary, thank you. Okay, that's a good question. This is gonna be easy. I'm optimistic. Okay,
So through the chair, after we do get through this list, I just have a general question.
yeah, anybody else from the public want to add to this list? Okay, yes.
So we're good on the list?
Yes.
I have a point about the list.
Hold on.
Go ahead. I'm not going to talk about the list.
You know what it is, right?
No, go ahead.
A recommendation from our board member here got me thinking, maybe we should add solar power to this, because we do have a brand-new solar committee reforming, and it might be something that, if it works out timing-wise, or maybe down the line, we could get grants or something for solar panels above the parking spaces, like they do at REI in Framingham. I don't know if it could happen in time or how that works, but, or if the new committee will be ready for such a thing, but we can talk about it.
Yeah.
I realize I was suggesting that aspect of it, but that's a really good idea.
It is.
Well, you inspired.
It's a good idea. Quickly.
Yes.
I have another agenda.
Yeah.
But
Okay, no, if he's got an agenda, I'll let you go
he
first.
wants to not talk about the agenda.
You just want to be like, okay.
Electric vehicle charging, because I don't
Yeah.
know if we have any electric vehicle charging downtown. And that might be a really nice add, to have a charging station or two.
Okay. And it's going to be interesting, I think, that we have a stakeholder that isn't here, and that's the town.
Yep.
On behalf of these questions. So that's something we're going to have to
Does
think
John
about.
represent the town?
And so, well, but he's not going to be making decisions about the electrical chart, unless you're prepared to make those decisions on behalf of the town of Hopkinton.
I am not.
Isn't
Power
that
him.
the planning board?
Okay.
And doesn't the electrical
I'm just saying that
charging-
there's a constituent, you know, there's a constituent spokesperson, maybe, somebody from the select board or the town manager, to work with some of these issues.
If we had our Solar Green Committee intact, they might.
They just
We do,
restarted.
to
They're
just
meeting this week or
So
next?
they may have
So
some
we have to-
input into doing solar panels and
Yes.
charging it into electrical outlets,
Oh,
you know.
I
and
see
it
that's
could be-
8:30, so I
that would
better
be
ask my
fancy.
question pretty quickly.
yes, so we are going to wrap up and continue, but yes.
Yes, I just want, through the chair, I just wanted to ask the applicant if they thought about a second entrance coming into the parking lot, in the donut parking lot.
In the middle?
Basically, almost like cutting the donut in half.
Well, are you talking about between the buildings?
Where it's straight into the parking lot off of Main Street, right
There is a driveway there now, There's an existing third driveway there now. We had not considered it primarily because we were concerned about too many access points onto Main Street.
Well, I was thinking entrance only through the chair, and my concern is that the donut, it's gonna be tough to get in and out of that donut, whereas if you had an entrance coming off of Main Street one way, it would.
I see it.
The reason it's not there actually has to do with the Main Street reconstruction in the original project. Having entrance prevents you from having parallel spaces along Main Street and prevents you from having other things. So when you're using the state money to reconstruct Main Street, you have to adhere to all the setbacks having to do with the driveways and things like that as you're putting in parallel spaces along Main Street. So if you adhere to the setbacks, you have a driveway in the middle, you have one space in between the first two driveways and one space in between the second two driveways, as opposed to having a driveway at the bottom and a driveway at the top. This was part of the discussion we had when we had the original project as to why to remove the other one. Besides the fact that that driveway is slightly offset from Walcott Street across the street. So it creates a weird traffic pattern as it exists today. So it's actually removed for a reason. It's removed with great thought as to why not to have it, because it does create conflicting traffic movements with across the street.
And I can politely disagree. I think it has a lot of value, but
Okay.
just a suggestion.
Yep, and there may be another time to bring it up.
Sure.
If you want to talk about it at more length, but that isn't to say I wasn't listening to every word you said. I understood your point. So, I want to suggest, we don't often do this, but I want to offer myself up in tribute, as it will. There may be a real value to meeting offline with Norman, with somebody from the Board of Appeals, with myself, with John, and if the board is amenable to me doing that, I will do that as the situation arises, if it's helpful. Is that okay?
I'm fine with that.
All right. So when would you like to continue this to, Mr. Joseph?
As soon as possible, whatever your schedule allows.
Schedule going forward is kind of late, didn't it? I mean, just from what the bottom of the memo.
Yeah, so we're kind of wide open, though. Is that right?
I'm just pulling up
23rd,
the schedule right now.
Citizen zoning petition and the common driveway special permit.
Way ahead of me, Dave. I can't find it for some reason.
Yeah, you want to see
Oh,
this?
I don't want to do that. Okay. Thank you. All right, so certainly we could do March 23rd. Is that too soon?
No.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to March 23rd.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Say Saturday.
That's right.
All right. I don't know what goes on. That's all right, we're gonna be on here. Yes. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So we are now gonna discuss the proposed zoning articles, and I'm gonna let Mary, the chair of the ZAC,
Okay, and the first one
Lead
up
us-
was, first one up was the non-conforming lots, uses, and structures. This is, and I am going to be reading off of a bylaw that was modified by the town council, so it's reviewed with, legal precedent. You have that up? Okay, so you have the original one up there, and then I'm reading the one that has his changes to it, his or her. So, to see if the town will vote to amend Article 19, non-conforming lots, uses, and structures, 210-128D, by inserting a new subsection E immediately following subsection D that reads, zoning enforcement officer waiver. The zoning enforcement officer shall waive the requirement for a special permit under 210 128, item A above. I'm going to have to read the A part. Provided the following criteria are met. So essentially, this is item, do you have item A, reasonably close? No, it's not.
No.
It's not on this document. So item A talks about having to go to zoning board of appeals for any existing house that is non-conforming. So an existing older house that may not meet setback requirements, et cetera, always has to go to zoning board of appeals to do minor structural changes. Anything, basically anything, because it's a non-conforming structure. So and this was proposed by one of our zoning enforcement. Mike Shepherd. And this is an effort to make it less burdensome for people who want to make minor changes to their homes, and I'm going through the minor changes that, we approve, in order to just go through the zoning enforcement officer, not have to go before ZBA, not have to, go through the fees and things like that associated with this, as well as the delay. So, the proposed alteration does not alter footprint of your existing dwelling. The proposed alteration does not alter the overall height of the existing dwelling. Some examples that Mike Shepherd gave us are the enclosure of a porch, or the lifting of dormers on an older house. So those two would fall within this zoning enforcement officer waiver. And what the property owner would need to meet. All owners of property that lie within 300 feet of the subject property, it has to be shown that they do not object to the proposed alteration, as evidenced by endorsement of a plan or copy of the plan showing the proposed alterations with dimensions. So basically, they need to have their plan written out, drawn with dimensions, take it to the abutters. They can obviously get a list of the abutters from the planning department, and they need to get their abutters within 300 feet to sign that plan. And then they can take it to the zoning enforcement officer and present it, saying, see, I've gotten the okay from all the neighbors. And then the zoning enforcement officer, if they feel it meets the requirements of this bylaw, then they could go ahead and do and grant them that building permit without going before ZBA. Is that essentially?
Correct. So, can I ask this question through the chair?
Yeah.
John, did we vote to support all this and the other 6 articles, all of them, all 7?
We voted to put them on the on the warrant, a placeholder on the warrant and the public hearing process. I don't think we have formally thumbs up or thumbs down on any of them.
That would be today.
Correct.
So after comments. Yeah.
Yep, makes sense, perfect.
We can remove them, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So open for
Public, and any members of the public have questions or comments on this proposed article?
So just a point of clarification on these, we did in ZAC have a provision that if the ZEO, if it met all the criteria and the ZEO did not feel comfortable about sending it, giving them the special permit outright, they could send it to the ZBA. That was taken out because it doesn't conform to the uniformity requirement of zoning. So basically, if something met those requirements, they conformed, they would have to give the special permit.
So I don't see any members of the public interested in, does any members of the planning board have questions or comments? Gary?
Through the chair, question for Mary. I just wanted to confirm that it's not that the owner has to get a signature from every abutter, it's that there have to be no objections from a...
Yes, but they have to prove that by getting the signature on the plans. How else can they prove that?
Through a public hearing and people having the...
I know, but what we're saying
okay.
is they don't have a public hearing. Yeah, this is the alternative. The
This is
That's
to go
fair.
straight to
Okay.
the,
Yeah, I had a question.
So,
Yeah, sorry. Not done.
sorry, I guess... okay.
Okay? You should lower your mic.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so my question was more in relationship to the number of abutters that needed to Is there a reason why it's 300?
300 feet.
Oh, 300 feet.
That's the definition of abutters.
Oh, okay, so.
very standard.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to know. I thought it was 300.
No.
The immediate, okay.
I was just going to speak in favor of this. I live in a downtown neighborhood, and this happens a lot, that I get notices as a butter that my neighbor has a porch that doesn't meet the setback requirements, and they're just going to enclose it or change the type of porch without changing the footprint. And
Can you just shut the door?
Sorry.
No, we have to leave the door open.
And it does seem like a nuisance to them to have to.
Leave the door open. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, hold on one second, Amy, I'm sorry. Why does it have to be open?
If it's closed, it prohibits people from coming into the meeting, and it's supposed to be an open, accessible meeting.
So we're just having a little hard time with noise. We're not trying to keep anybody out, so go ahead, I'm gonna let you
So I
finish.
just think this is a useful bylaw because I've seen it in practice. And I think maybe at town meeting, if we could have a slide or two about explaining it a little bit.
Yes.
It's a hard concept to understand.
Yes, yes, okay.
Overall, I think it's a great idea. It speeds up the process, and I think it just makes sense. And 300 feet actually is a big area, especially if you live in the downtown area. That's a lot of houses.
A lot of signatures.
Yeah.
So it could be 10 to 20 people. I'm just trying to figure out, yeah, that's reasonable.
They could always choose to go to the Board of Appeals rather than get the signatures.
Yes,
But
that's
they have
true.
the option.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to support this article for town meeting.
So moved?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay.
What was the next one I'm supposed to?
Oh, yeah, it's the wireless telecommunication
I'm
facilities.
gonna let John handle that.
Okay. I like it.
Wireless communications.
So this is in response to a change in the federal regulations for wireless telecommunications facilities. And basically, it's that you cannot, a locality cannot require a special permit for new telecommunication facilities unless it's substantially different than what's already there. So it just basically takes the language from the federal regulations and applies it to the local regulations. And it should be noted that up to this point, the town just wasn't, I don't want to say not following its own regulations, but they were complying with the federal regulations without enforcing the parts of the local regulations that didn't comply. So it's basically just bringing everything into conformance.
And for clarification, I guess, there's been no complaints about the local bylaw anyways, so previously, so we might as well just move on and make it all how it should be.
Okay, any questions from any members of the board? How about members of the public? Well, let's hope that that carries forward to town meeting.
Oh, no, it would.
All right.
They've got to be here for something.
All right, I will entertain a motion to approve this zoning change for town meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
To
Yes?
support,
What did I say?
approve,
Oh,
To
Support.
support this.
Okay, yeah, so,
okay.
I'm meeting with.
We're definitely not approving it here, right? Okay, to support keeping it on, I mean, we're endorsing it for town meeting. Support the article for town meeting.
Support approval.
Moving forward.
that's what I
Recommend, yeah.
You recommend
We're
approval.
recommending the article for consideration at town meeting,
For approval at town meeting.
for approval at town meeting.
You've already recommended it for.
Good heavens, we'll get there. Okay, so thank you.
Second.
Somebody save me. Any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay.
okay, the next one is the accessory family dwelling unit, which is actually supplementary regulations, that's what it's called. And it's just 210-126, Article 18. Takes me a while to read Roman numerals. The town council it's impossible to tell what the actual things are. So I'm gonna pull up, you have my Word version that's the red line?
I don't, not, I mean.
You don't?
I can get it, but I don't have
Okay.
it readily
So
available.
I'm going to talk in general terms at the moment. Can you find it while I'm talking? Okay. So the purpose of this, the discussion that came before the zoning advisory committee was to look for ways to make it more affordable to stay in town early in life and later in life, and also to make the accessory family dwelling unit a little more workable. It's a very complicated thing to achieve right now, and there's lots of different hoops to jump through, you might say. So what we, and we had a lot of discussion back and forth, and this is really a compromise version that the zoning advisory committee came up with. We were striking the word family from most of the verbiage in here. You know, there's several places where it says accessory family dwelling unit. Wanted to just call it the accessory dwelling unit. And this, of course, refers to a small apartment that is separate from but subordinate to a main dwelling unit, you know, a single-family home. In most cases, these would be used for a mother-in-law apartment, perhaps a college-age child who hasn't managed to get the heck out of the house yet, or caregivers. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to change the wording in this, was to make it appropriate for caregivers to be able to use these apartments as well. So we added specific language that would allow caregivers, and we also wanted to acknowledge the fact that the meaning of family in 2020 is different than perhaps when this bylaw was originally put into place. And that, so we struck language related to additional family is related by blood, marriage, or adoption. We struck that part, by blood, marriage, or adoption. Because families, sometimes there's not a marriage, but there's still family involved, you know, it's, other than that, and also there's a portion about the member of the additional family is 60 years of age or older. That has to be stricken from this bylaw, because that's illegal to have that. Did you find it? You did. Okay. So the changes that we made. So we struck some details out of C that talk about the existing unit shall accommodate an additional family member only if the member is related by blood, marriage, or adoption, or 60 years of age or older. Page up. And then in E, we struck the part about there has to be an interior doorway between the two units. Really doesn't matter. If it works for the structure, you put one in. If it doesn't make sense to. Now you can page up. No, page, yeah, I'm sorry, that way. Okay, and then the final part was to change the definition slightly. So accessory dwelling unit shall mean a dwelling unit contained within or being an extension of a single-family structure to accommodate a caregiver or service provider or an additional family member. It should have member in there. I think it's been corrected by the council. Only if additional family, oh, you're right. Yeah, up to 3 people. Only if a member of the additional family is related to the owner of the premises. And we left it to the related being discretionary, determined by, you know, the people who administer this article. And so essentially what has not been changed is the fact that the design of an accessory family dwelling unit has to be subordinate to the main dwelling. There cannot be an exterior stairway. It still has to have the look of a single family home, so it doesn't start to look like an apartment complex. So, and I think that's it.
Questions
Yes.
from the board?
Mary, you've done through the chair, Mary, you've done a wonderful job focusing and clarifying least 3 major areas that will be discussed. It can be very difficult at town meetings sometimes to bring up this topic. It's been years and years and years that it comes up. I think there might be some questions about what happens when you move and things like that, but I think from prior conversations that with this board that we've covered that, and I'm sure we'll be ready for town meeting, so I just want to applaud you for your effort. Thank you.
Team effort. Yep, thanks.
Okay. Just thank you. I think it's smart language.
I appreciate the nod to the times we live in.
Yes.
Is there any members of the public here? Please come forward, introduce yourself, sir, and your address, and then let us know your question or comment.
Ron, is it on? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Ron Prefer, 31 Huckleberry. So the way it's worded, it still requires a family member. So when you say caregiver, so if you have a nanny, in-home on pair, a caregiver that's not family, that is not allowed.
It actually, if you page down to the bottom there.
Because she said we didn't see that.
Is that, it says a caregiver or an additional family.
Or.
Who
so,
is. Who is.
Okay,
So
now
it's
it's-
only that part that who is the, yes, the caregiver does not have to be related.
Excellent. And the last question I have is, can this be utilized as a loophole to allow renters?
Clearly, even the bylaw as it stands, because, people are not going in and checking who lives in these places, yes, there's a loophole. And there, I
Not
think.
that I'm utilizing it, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think that anyone theoretically can be renting accessory family dwelling units right now. But we're doing the best we can, understandably, with this language, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, so I will entertain a motion to recommend approval at annual town meeting of this article.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Okay, the next is the signs. Temporary signs, okay. So this article is specifically related to the downtown corridor project and an effort to have some provisions in place to help businesses in the downtown corridor during construction. So that's the sole purpose for this, but we have, what did we decide ultimately? Yep, we did decide to, instead of, because zoning really is not supposed to be for temporary situations, and after a great deal of discussion, we decided to have this in here. Whenever there was significant construction, then it could be appropriate to have these provisions in place for businesses that are affected. So essentially, business access during construction in right-of-way. Affected businesses shall be defined for the purpose of this subsection as a business for which access has been reasonably determined by the zoning enforcement officer to be blocked, hindered, or otherwise adversely affected due to nearby construction within right-of-way. Each affected business may display up to 4 temporary signs or sandwich boards within 600 feet of their property line on which the lot of the business where it's located. And notwithstanding any otherwise applicable duration limit set forth in this section. In other words, there's a duration limit of 30-day maximum for temporary signs. That's part of the signage bylaw right now. That is not applicable for this subsection. So, and the idea was up to 4 temporary signs. It would be a sandwich board possibly at the end of the construction saying, we're still open. That's all. Okay, that's it.
And so just one other point, we did have some language about what would be on the signs, but that was removed due to
That pesky
government not
First
being,
Amendment.
government not able to tell people what they can say.
Okay. All right,
The
yes.
comment, just want to say this, thank you for doing this. It's great that the town and the ZAC are doing something to help the downtown residents during the construction. Downtown businesses.
I do have a question, is there any kind of language that indicates the size of the signs or the frequency of the signs, other than the fact that they're 600 feet?
No.
Up to 4.
Up to 4.
Up to 4 temporary signs, but what is it, what defines temporary signs?
Is the temporary signs defined by size?
Yeah, so the sign bylaw has dimensions
It
for
has-
signs.
And it's not pounded into the ground. It's
It's
like a
not-
sandwich board. It would be
So it's
sitting
sandwich
someplace.
board size. Can we pull that language up? Just to confirm what we're going to be seeing as we drive down the street.
Temporary could be a banner.
It can be a
It might be
banner, and
smaller,
banners are
too.
big too, right? Well, let's see what size, I'm not sure.
The definition of temporary sign. Doesn't give dimensions. But
And the sandwich board is also,
So-
Yeah, my input would be to.
temporary signs is also regulated here. So banners are 24 feet, 8 square feet. So they would still be regulated by these dimensions. It would just be the time and the placement.
24 square feet, so 10 by 20.
6 by 4.
Or 6 by 4.
now that says temporary signs, 8 square feet in area.
So the banner is only on the premise, not off-site. So the sandwich boards or the temporary signs could be off-site, which would be 8 square feet.
Okay.
Okay.
I still think that that it could become really visually obtrusive, because it sounds like both of them would be allowed. So you'd be able to have a banner going across the front and sandwich boards. So should it be one or the other? Should there be some kind of language that would indicate
A banner
a
across the front
choice?
of their own business,
Right.
but then the sandwich boards are 600 feet away.
Right, so there's these big, huge banners going across the front of the business saying, hey, we're open. That's a pretty big sign. I mean, if we saw one on every single one of the buildings that is gonna be closed, or temporarily.
We did discuss this and decided that there would be a certain amount of self-regulation, because, they are having to pay for these and put them up.
Through the chair.
But
Just want to add my comment also, that I support the article as it is, because it's a 1 or 2 year period, and there's going to be construction. It's going to look a mess, so I'm not too concerned about signs during that short period of time, my own opinion.
I concur.
I disagree. I'll just reflect that in my vote. I think there should be maybe some kind of language that indicates a little bit of a special size.
I just want to tell everybody who's here that the library has now alarmed itself for the evening. We have to come and go through this door here. However, the door to the back hallway that has the restrooms is open. We can access the restrooms, but don't exit out that way. Or, we'll be in Hop News. Okay, so I think this is an important point, and I'm kind of struggling with it too.
I'd like to wordsmith it a little bit.
I think, so it says up to, I really like this idea, so I want to make sure that
do
I'm
too.
really clear
I do
about
too.
that. And it's up to 4 signs. I mean, worst case, it could be a lot of signs.
yes, worst case, it could be.
I feel like businesses are gonna all want to self-regulate, so there's clarity out there for themselves and their neighbors. I just don't know if there's a way to wordsmith it a little bit to make sure that we're happy with it, and we're thinking about it in terms of the downtown corridor project, but this could be any larger construction project too. Not that we want to do that anytime soon.
Is there a way that we could choose to wordsmith this and come back and discuss it again?
Do we have the opportunity at March 23rd to vote on whether or not planning board?
Continue this.
It's a public hearing, you can continue indefinitely.
Yeah, I just wondered timeline.
We can continue this one to the 23rd.
Yeah, I'd like to stop and, discuss it with among, and then just try to figure out some nice wording that would kind of make it a little bit tighter, but also at an advantage for everybody that.
I really like the idea as well, yes.
Through the chair, can I just clarify? So the primary concern is that there could be too many signs, or that.
Yeah, it could be very confusing and distracting for not only construction, but then signs and trying to get to where you're going, yeah.
Any members of the public here to speak about this? Yeah.
Dale Danahy, 25 Main Street. So I was in business in the 80s when the town did the sewer project, and there was no signage, and people didn't know if businesses were open or not. So the answer to that was a cardboard sign at the beginning of Main Street, the beginning of construction, that said businesses are open. Unfortunately, the person writing it out couldn't spell the word business. So it was an embarrassment. So you really do need something so people know the businesses are open. And it needs to be clear, concise, and it needs to be at both ends, all four ends, because you're going to be all four ends coming into town. The businesses need that. Another thing, if we're going to regulate, yes, the town needs to do that as well. They put a sign up on the handicapped parking in front of the Middlesex Savings Bank that said, "No parking, construction zone." And that was up in September, it was up in October, construction ended, I'm not sure why it was even there. I pointed it out in January at a meeting to Mike Shepard, it was still up in February. So come on, guys, look at your own signs and be a little more smart about it.
Is it still up now?
No, finally came down, I almost took it down myself.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
That's not a bad idea to put some language in there that at the end of construction, the contractor's responsible, or somebody could take.
For the business.
The businesses in this case.
The businesses.
I'm just throwing this out there for people to ponder. Is this something that we should contemplate having the town be responsible for and regulate it that way? Like they put up the signs?
Not a bad idea.
I
guess I'm just worried that they might not do it in the way that the businesses would want, or not, maybe not enough, not clear enough. I would like to give the businesses a little more control.
I'm a little concerned that the sandwich boards are awesome, but they're also hard to see too if they're low down, so I think we really just need to take a little more time to think about what type of signage is available for these businesses so that they can prosper during these times.
Okay. All right. So, yes, please.
Yeah, one more thing that they did put on the signs, businesses are open, but they did the construction hours. So from 7 a.m. to 2, or whatever the hours are, so people know that at 3 o'clock, there's no construction vehicles down there, I can get to the businesses easier, and people could plan their day a little better. So if you had construction hours somewhere listed, and it might vary, but usually they have to close it down for school buses and stuff, but it gave people an opportunity to plan their day of when they want to go to the business.
Through the chair, Dale. So when you went through this signage process and the various different times in town that we've had signage, has there been any samples of effective signage that you felt was?
The only thing that they did was that cardboard sign. That was it. We had nothing in front of any of the businesses. We weren't allowed to say we were open or closed. It was just one crappy sign.
Okay.
You're not quite over it either. Okay, hold on. Yes.
Point of clarification, this is not intended to be construction management signs from the town. This is just to allow businesses to post signs for their own business. The town may have a sign program that they're going to implement. That's not what this is.
Fair enough.
I was going to make that very same point. We're talking about two different things. One is business signs and the other construction signs that, the traffic management people would organize, and maybe that's something that we need to address further
Separately.
on.
Okay,
They covered what I was gonna say.
okay, all right, just,
They can, let's just get to this, level set this. They can put up to 4 temporary signs
right now,
away from the building, 1 banner on the front of the building, and that's it with this amendment. So that,
this amendment doesn't add the banners. The banner is part of the temporary sign bylaw.
yeah,
So it's
They
4
could do one
max,
banner and
including the
3
banner.
signs.
4 max including the banner, so
These are. So these are within, I would argue that somebody could argue that you could have 4 additional signs, which, whatever. I guess it's important to know that businesses can put up a banner, right? And it's important to note that we are intentionally trying to make it possible for them to also erect temporary signs that are not necessarily on top of their doors, but are somewhere to help direct traffic, direct people to parking, make sure people know that they're open, whatever makes sense during the construction period. Within 600 feet.
So through the chair, I think point of clarification is needed. If they want to do a banner and 4 signs, the banner or one of the temporary signs would be limited to 30 days. If they want to do 3 temporary signs and a banner, then those would be the 4 signs.
Okay.
So if they want to do 4 signs and a banner, one of those signs would not be included in this.
yeah, the only thing that could really be, from a visual eyesore point of view, is you have this big 24 square foot banner on the front of a building. It would look
Nobody's going to notice it past all the construction pits and barriers. Feeling, I mean, in terms of eyesore status, but yeah.
But like, I just don't envision people aren't gonna be tripping over signs. It's not gonna happen.
Right.
Like,
Let's not overregulate.
Okay, all right. So I'll entertain a motion to continue this to the 23rd. Definitely, if you have thoughts about either leaving it the same, exactly as it is, or making adjustments, get those comments to John.
Should we take a straw poll right now, how many of us would leave as is versus change?
Nope.
To give direction, no?
No.
Okay.
Because I really think that we're going to answer these questions on town meeting floor. We might as well work through it now. We have the time. That's why not.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Next one is car.
I'll
I'm sorry.
entertain the motion
Oh,
to
that's right.
continue this to the 23rd.
so moved.
Second.
Any further comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm gonna abstain.
1 abstention.
Okay, the next article is the car washes in downtown business district. Currently, the car washes are allowed in the downtown business district, I think by special permit, yeah, used by special permit. We propose to strike that from the allowed uses in the downtown business district. This was part of an article last year, but we had it combined last year to take it out of the downtown business district and put it into allowed uses in industrial A, I think. And it narrowly was defeated. And based on the comments, it seemed that most people at town meeting at the time supported taking it out of downtown business district, and that's primarily because there's no space for queuing cars for a car wash. That's primarily the reason. So that's it.
Okay. Any questions from members of the board?
Fully supported.
Awesome. Any questions from members of the public on the car wash article? Okay. I will entertain a motion to recommend approval of this article annual town meeting. You said approval before.
Correct.
Okay. And I have
Correct,
said
yep.
that a couple of times.
Correct.
And I have made it through the gauntlet now. What? So I am entertaining a motion to recommend approval at annual town meeting, but we are not approving it here for sure. Any further, is there a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions, any comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Was there a second?
Amy and
I
I
think it was
both
me.
did,
Okay.
yeah.
There's one opposition, Frank opposes. Any abstentions? Okay. All right.
The next item is Industrial B District Housekeeping. It's simply a renumbering of the outline, and that can't be done without a vote at town meeting. So, nothing more to say about that.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any from the public?
Through the
See.
board, can I just, this car wash thing, you know, it's off the chart, but that won't keep the youth group from doing their voluntary car
So
wash?
we already finished the car wash thing, but no, it's about building a car wash.
That's what I thought, thank you.
Yep.
Start clarifying that before
Yep.
we get a question.
For the teams can't support themselves. Good thought. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to recommend approval at annual town meeting of this housekeeping article for Industrial B.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Now, the reason you are all
Okay.
here, the commercial solar voltaic installations. This was brought forward by one of our ZAC members who was trying to look for a way to encourage the use of solar installations like over, on buildings and over parking lots, but not clear-cutting trees to do solar installations for commercial use. And keeping in mind that this bylaw only affects those installations that are on the ground. It does not have anything to do with the ones on buildings, you know, on top of buildings and so on. So it doesn't regulate that. And it doesn't regulate the ones on top of parking lots, because all of those are considered accessory uses. It also doesn't regulate residential ones, because those are considered accessory uses and residential use, not commercial. So, the Zoning Advisory Committee investigated what has been done in several other towns in Massachusetts, and that was to create a specific overlay district within the town, specifically stating that commercial solar voltaic installations on the ground are allowed in these areas. And thereby, by having those specifically allowed, it in effect made it more difficult for people to come in and do developments in other parts of the town. So basically, by directing them to certain areas which, you know, collectively we as a town feel are appropriate. Some of the areas that we felt were obviously perfectly appropriate might be in the clover leaves of 495, 90, that sort of thing. So even though we don't own that land, the state owns the land, we're still responsible for the zoning of it because it's in our town. So, and the map that we have, do you have it up there? Yep, you have it up there. So this map is completely subject to changes before town meeting. So, you know, the map is not set in stone by any means, but that is the purpose of the change to the bylaws, to insert this map and to potentially direct development of future solar farms to those areas that we in town feel are the appropriate places for them.
Yes.
Just to add on, just wanted to explain to the public that this does not prevent solar panels on their property. It's only where the main, because that's not the main use of the property. This is only for a solar farm where the main use is solar, correct?
Yep. Those are the commercial solar voltaic.
I think most people are looking at the map and
Yep.
fixated by the map. So can we just get a quick review of what is already pre-approved for solar and start there on this map?
John, why don't you go through that?
Yes, so we'll start from the east. So this is the Franklin Solar parcel that is currently before the board. This is the East Main Solar. It is currently constructed, however, I don't believe it's connected, but it is on the ground. This is the TJA Wilson Street Solar, which was recently purchased by Grasshopper, and they are currently doing the due diligence to get a building permit. This is Hayden Row Solar. It's a little small one that is constructed and operational. This is the Lumber Street Solar, which I believe is also constructed and operational. This is the Mechanic Street, Wood Street Solar, which was recently approved by the board. It has not been constructed, but it is approved. And this is just Harvey Transfer Station. There's no solar on there, but it is in the Industrial B District. And then this is all the 495 corridor. This piece right here is MassDOT property. It's connected to 495. I believe there's a warehouse garage or something on there, but it's difficult to separate that piece from this parcel within the GIS. But that is MassDOT property. And those are the locations that are on the map.
So as the map currently stands, just to kind of summarize, everything is either been in process to get approvals, or has approvals, or actually has been constructed, as the map is
With the
today.
exception of the Harvey Transfer Station and 495.
Does that, quick question on that, does the solar that's on the exit, is that in Westboro? There's solar panels up the access road?
Yes.
Is that Westboro?
Yeah, that's Westboro.
The solar, I don't know.
There's some solar panels in the new,
After
what is
the
that
Clover
building
Leaf.
that's built?
The MassDOT facility?
Yes.
That's in the parking lot. I believe it's in Hopkinton. We're talking about the same thing.
So would you say the mass what?
The MassDOT facility, the research facility?
Yes.
Off of McAdam?
Yeah. McAdam, is that the access road?
Yeah.
Access road?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's basically in the parking lot of that facility.
Yep.
It's not a farm,
Your neighborhood.
But there's still solar.
but it's not a commercial solar facility.
Accessory use.
Oh,
Accessory
Okay,
use.
got it, thanks. Got me on a technicality, thank you.
Okay, anybody else up here want questions, or shall we focus on the public's questions for a little while? Yes.
I'm opposed to this because I think it's too restrictive. There are other areas in town that could be developed for solar farms that are already clear cut, that are not in this map. And for instance, Fruit Street Field has quarry areas that we planned 10 years ago to put solar panels on, we never did. That remains clear cut because it's sand. Workman's Camp is, I believe, up for sale. And there's acres and acres and acres of land that is lawn, and who knows what the new owners want to do or develop there. I wouldn't want to restrict someone from doing an alternative energy project. I do agree that cutting trees for solar power is not the best feeling in the world, but I do not like, I don't think we have the ability to tell people what to do with their property. The YMCA is also not a large property that could be, every now and then, is rumored to be up for sale. Many acres of cleared land there for soccer fields. And who knows, when someone's doing a building project, they may want to clear land between buildings and come up with a parking lot that has, all right, that's accessory use.
Yeah, that's accessory.
But my overall point is that we have a very good, very strong solar bylaw in town. I keep on looking at John because this is history. But the law that we have is in line with state law, which says we shouldn't have a too strict a law against solar power. And I think this is a restrictive way of planning for the future because it excludes the X factor. We don't know what every property could be used for. We don't know. We're not. If it's in the current zoning and people are thinking maybe I want to do this, now they won't be able to. I don't think that's the fairest way of approaching our concerns. I think that the planning board has a significant power in order to help lead and guide solar power projects that are all ground-based, and I think we've done a really good job looking at our successes in doing that. And I don't see a change for this, and I don't think that we should involve ourselves in changing this.
So I just want to, just for the public, I appreciate your comments, Frank. Zoning is all about taking some time to decide where you do want uses. And I understand that people are going to fall on all sides of this issue, but it is well within town meetings' purview to consider this as a topic. What isn't allowable is to make it so that something can't come into town. So this is an attempt, this is a sort of a secondary step in an attempt to take our solar bylaw and just simply define where commercial solar can be placed. And we are open to everybody's feedback, and we are open to ideas, particularly on the map. This is an attempt to make an improvement that we thought that folks in town might support or might be looking for, but it is the decision of annual town meeting to decide it. Yes.
So I just want to make a point in response to Frank's comment. So if somebody does want, after this goes into effect, assuming it goes into effect, if somebody wants to build a solar farm, they can. They just have to bring it up to town meeting, and the town meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, can vote to amend this map.
That's correct.
And the town gets to decide whether they want it.
And that does happen, right? That does happen at times. It is a cumbersome process, though. I think it makes sense to take a really good crack at this map. The first time. Yes.
Okay. So I do agree with Frank for all the reasons, and I won't repeat them, but I think there are a lot of folks in this town that have still a lot of acreage, and they have not been well informed. And I think that would be inappropriate for us to dictate how we are going to tell them to sell their property or not sell their property. They currently, if they have they could divide their property. They could do solar in some parts, they could sell it to a developer. But if we rule out the possibility that they can't do solar, what's left? What's left? Houses, school kids, property, more infrastructure. I just think that it's premature. I think that we need a lot more discussion. I think we need to survey all of the folks in town, and I think many of them are here, and find out who these property owners are and how they might feel about it. I think that it's invasive on, for instance, just a few large property owners, Smith Mills, Fruit Street, even our own town, we would have to abide by this. There are a lot of brown property going in on Fruit Street. If this passes, we miss the opportunity to beautify the driveway going into Fruit Street. We could take advantage of putting up solar panels, and then Planning Board then has the option of putting in pollinators and flowering trees and shrubbery to block those. If people say they're ugly, well, you know what? We don't have to look at them. We can protect that, but we can also have an opportunity to beautify these huge brown areas that the town owns and gain more income. Garner Brothers, that's another huge property. My question is, did Zach take a look at large property owners that are left in town, and have they been considered?
Well, first of all, any large brown parcels that you're referring to, we have the opportunity to add those to this map.
Correct. I'm just
so
not
that is the purpose of some of this discussion, is to add those, because what we were most concerned about is one is impact on neighboring properties, and as Muriel pointed out, that's the purpose of zoning is to decide what uses you're going to have in what areas, but also to identify what parcels are appropriate. Do we feel, in this public hearing, what parcels do we feel are appropriate, so that it's not a developer coming in and deciding what parcels they think are appropriate to do this.
Hold on. I also want to make a point to something that you said, and it's very important, and it's key to understanding as well, is that the entire town is noticed.
when it's on the warrant, right? That's the purpose of an annual town meeting. That's the purpose of zoning articles going to annual town meeting. And it is a 2/3 vote to pass any zoning articles. So this is something that everybody has access to ahead of town meeting. And I recognize that not everybody necessarily takes advantage of that, but that's why they go to annual town meeting. Yes.
Just 2 points to make. First, I just wanted to push back on something that Jane had said earlier. And just because something can be approved for solar doesn't mean it can be approved for other uses. So the reality is that there are requirements for residential neighborhoods that don't necessarily apply to solar. And it doesn't mean that there aren't some that do, but just because solar is not allowed doesn't mean that a lot is going, or a piece of land is going to be developed and houses are going to be put in. And then secondly, just going back to the map discussion, it feels to me like the Fruit Street parcel would be worth considering adding to this. And I'm curious if Zach had any discussion around that. And I'm just thinking of the brownfield site, the notion that it really is a former sand pit of sorts, and that just, it feels like that would be a parcel that might also that solar might be an appropriate play on.
So I wholeheartedly agree. There is some history of it being discussed previously. I wholeheartly agree with that conceptually. I just want to make sure that we look at the history and see what I have no recollection of why we didn't go forward with solar out there, but do you know?
My memory was that it was too expensive to connect to the grid from that location. It doesn't mean that it couldn't be done in the future.
Okay.
But there was a cost issue.
It was just a municipality decision, because that is our property. So I'm 100%, I wasn't arguing, I was just like, hold on one second. I'm going to ask people who have not yet spoken, but I'm not shutting anybody down.
I just want to ask the process. So tonight or next week, if we add to the map, we're going to have to re-notify abutters, correct? So, okay.
Yeah, I was going to make that point if I can jump in. So I would recommend adding parcels to the map if that's going to happen either tonight or soon after, because you do need to notify and re-notice the hearing. And for zoning articles, it's a 2 consecutive week notice period. So if you push it off a little bit longer, you're really butting up against town meeting. So the adding of the parcels needs to happen relatively quick.
So that's an important point to anybody in the audience that is interested in that conceptually, is that we would, we will not close this hearing until we've heard from everybody, but we can't speak on it until tomorrow. We may have to continue it. But if there are people who are bringing up potentially expanding this map, we would want to hear from them in particular tonight if everybody was amenable to that.
So I'm just going to say, in general, I'm very supportive of the article. I thought we had to reluctantly approve too many giant solar farms that cut down trees, and I'd like us to be able to manage that a little better. But I really would like to hear from everybody here tonight.
I'd like to reiterate that. I'm very much in favor in taking a look at sort of just keeping our minds and our eyes on where these big installations are going. I think we all want to maintain our forests and our woods and our antiquities and in the relationship to it. That's one of the reasons that I moved to town, and I'm sure that's why other people moved as well, is because there's a lot of space and a lot of trees and natural habitat and things like that we just can't prevent, and we can't promote their reliance on the environment if we keep crowding them out. So.
Okay, is there anybody that hasn't spoken yet? That would be you.
Right now, I think there's a certain number of homeowners that live in fear of a giant solar farm being next door to them. Every solar farm project, we have a lot of angry abutters. A lot of people hire lawyers trying to prevent them, and as a board, we have no control. So we need to basically take back some control, in my opinion. How many of these solar farms are in the last year? The vast majority of them. And at that rate, it's going to expand even worse. Well, depending on what you look at it, worse or better.
I was just gonna say, we love solar.
But it's going to be a bigger concern for homeowners in town, where like anyone that owns a property over 10 acres for sure, they'll have people contacting them. Are you looking to sell? And you'll have solar farms. This map will get a lot different view. So I'm a big believer in solar, but like when you take into accessory uses on homes, parking lots, commercial buildings, the amount of solar that can be in town is almost 90%. Like having a solar overlay district for just basically clear cutting forest to basically provide it back to the grid, we need to prevent that.
All right, so Jane, I know you want, no, but can you just wrap up? Because I need to get to the public.
Yes, I think we're going down a dangerous road here. If you're going to control commercial solar to that point, what's to keep the town from trying to control homes from being built?
That's what zoning is.
Well, I think we have zoning through the chair.
Yeah.
The planning board does have control over solar farms to the extent where we can create fencing that's wildlife friendly, that we can keep at 6 inches or 8 inches off the ground so the habitat can get in there. We can plant friendly trees and bushes. In fact, through open space, I took part in multiple training, and the green gases are versus trees and pollinators and all of these replacement bushes that we have as a planning board the ability to replace. There is no scientific evidence that says one is better than the other. In fact, when I asked the instructor that, they said, oh, I knew somebody was going to ask that question. There's just no data. We don't have enough information, so that's it.
Perfect, thank you. And you will have plenty of opportunity to speak again. I would like to invite members of the public to come forward.
Process?
Hold on. I just want to remind people who are new to the process that you first need to introduce yourself and your address. There's a lot of people here. We have 25 minutes. So we want to hear what people have to say. We won't shut this down until we have had the opportunity. We'll continue the hearing, certainly. So I want people to make sure that they know that they can communicate what they came to communicate. Also encourage people to put their concerns or questions in writing, so it's part of the public record if they would like to do that. Yes.
Question about process. I have a suggestion that I think before we go to public, we should suggest properties and vote on them amongst ourselves, and then just hear my suggestion now, and then go to the public, and if anybody has a suggestion, vote on them at that time when they suggest it. Like we mentioned Fruit Street, I think we should.
Yep, I've already written Fruit Street down.
I think we should vote on it.
But I actually think we should contemplate more changes and do it all at once, but I defer.
Could we keep a running list of suggestions?
Yep.
And then
Yep, I've got one.
I'd rather vote for them individually, just my suggestion.
Yep.
My opinion.
My point is, I don't think we can identify every single property and know what the owner's intention is now or in the future.
So Frank, we never can do that when we're
Right.
contemplating zoning, but.
I do appreciate you want to add, you're open to adding to it.
Yeah, so does anybody want to vote property by property as their, I think it'll take too long, and we want to hear, I want to maximize my ability to get people who came tonight to speak. We can vote them individually?
Yeah, that's what
Does
I was
that
saying.
help?
That's what I
But
was
I'm to
saying.
keep a list so
Yeah.
that we, okay.
Sure.
All right. All right, so if anybody's here to speak on the solar zoning, please stride on forward.
So through the chair, before they go to that, I just want to call attention to a letter from Ron Nation that was submitted.
Yeah.
It's in the file. And then I also got a letter from Tom Robertson about an hour and a half ago. I will add that to the file. I'm not going to read it. It's a couple pages long, but I'll
Okay.
add that to the file as well.
Okay, so we'll definitely have to relook at that file. Yes, sir.
John Ritz, 11 Erica Drive. Questions on the 495 corridor. A couple of things. First of all, the parcel around the Mass Dockyard is all wetlands. I know this is just zoning and not actual permitting, but I don't see anything's ever going to go in there anyway, so I'm not sure why that's included, other than the fact that it's part of the 495 line. But on the 495 corridor, is the plan to be within the clover leaves and within the median, or on the sides, or is it all wide open?
Or are they improving them to be put on the highway?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the intent was to have it on the medians and in the clover leaves. That parcel is all one owner, so we theoretically could put an overlay of just over, I guess, the center part of the parcel, but for argument's sake, we were just grabbing the parcels as they are, and since they're the same owner, and marking them as an overlay there.
And you mentioned the Ron Nation letter. I heard some about that. When are you going to be discussing that?
Any second. He's here.
Okay, because I have.
He'll be coming,
I
yeah,
have concerns about that. And
okay,
I can come back.
absolutely.
And a quick moment of levity. My wife is watching on HCAM and she's wondering who this Zach guy is that everybody is talking about.
I had that problem for a while.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ron Prefer again, 31 Huckleberry. So it's two quick questions, one comment. The map that's listed up here is different than the one that was mailed to us, specifically on Huckleberry Road. I just want to confirm that this is the final one, because the one that was sent has a little property that was shaded in. Has that been correct?
That was grabbed erroneously when we were making the GIS map. That does not get included.
That's the final one. Okay.
But I want to stress, a couple people have asked about the map being final, and it's not until it's voted at annual town meeting. So people are recommending changes to this as we go. I just want to.
It happens to be residential property that was accidentally
I just wanted to make sure.
So the second comment is, with the shaded area where the 495 and the 90 meet the mass, that area is under construction for the new, the alteration of that intersection. Is that correspond to the proposals, or is it still subject to change because the dimensions may change?
I'm not sure I understood your question.
With the 495 and 90 meet, it's under construction, or there's a proposal
The proposal to change it,
yes.
yeah.
Is that going to augment that map?
This is the current state.
Correct. So this was done through what the GIS we have now.
Okay.
So this is the parcel lines as they currently exist.
So is there a potential that would shrink or expand? Or
So
stay the same?
this would be the map that would get voted on at town meeting. And so if the parcel lines change, this would not get changed until it was changed at town meeting.
Okay, thank you. The last question / comment is, so I just want to clarify something. So every single browned out area except the 495 corridor already has been approved by this body, correct?
No.
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 Has anything on that map been approved by this body?
Yes. Yes. So there is the parcel up here, that's the Harvey property, that has not been approved for solar.
That does not also have a proposal for solar.
No,
It's just
there's
an
no
industrial
proposal
zone
for
district.
solar. It's just, right. And then down there, that is currently under consideration by the planning board. That's at the Liberty Mutual property.
Okay. So basically, so I'm going to wrap up. So my question is, based upon some of the comments here, I'm in support of putting something in place because any new property would have to require coming to this board. Because if we do not do something like that, then what's to say someone says, well, oh, I can do what I want to frack. It's the same general, remember, you're the one that said, like, people have the rights, and I agree with the rights, but when there's something.
Through here, that's not actually accurate, though.
Well, that's what was stated. I'm just reiterating the words that were stated. That
You're misunderstanding.
Okay.
Excuse me. Commercial solar is allowed everywhere in town right now. So everywhere in town, somebody can come forward with a proposal.
Yes.
For this, yes.
With approval from this board.
Yes.
Now, this is changing to
Stop.
your
You
town
gotta
meeting
keep
approval.
going, right.
But basically, so the proposal is to maintain that, correct?
The proposal is to,
Maintain the status quo where people have to come forward to this body, request permission, or
it
based
would
upon what you're
still be,
saying, it's
it would,
not. That's the
it
thing
would
they're
still
conflict.
be permitted by special permit, yes. In the, yes,
But town
in
meeting.
the areas where solar is allowed, if the map changes.
And if we want to go change the map, this will come to this body again for a vote.
The map, zoning maps can only be amended and changed by a 2/3 vote at town meeting. This process is the public hearing process to tee up the change.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just confused about that.
Yep, you're welcome. Yes, sir.
Just a point of that clarity and that, I think it doesn't have to come here, it could go straight to town meeting through a citizen's petition.
Yes, a citizen's petition, but it would still have to come through
Yeah.
us for zoning changes come through us.
Ted Barker Hook, 75 Grove Street, also a member of ZAC. I helped piece this together. Muriel, you made a point I was going to make, which is right now, the entire town is orange. Right now, the entire town is zoned for solar, and it can go anywhere as long as the planning board approves the process. I want to reiterate that I think we had two goals in this. One was to protect trees, especially old trees. There are trees along 495, but they started growing in 1960, something like that. It's not the same kind of forest. But it was also to protect neighborhoods. Having been on the Conservation Commission and ZAC when the solar farm went in off of Alexander Road, it was heart-wrenching to hear what those neighbors had to say, and to drive through that neighborhood now and look just past their homes at what they're looking at is heartbreaking. The nature is gone, the beauty of the lots are gone. And right now, that can happen anywhere in town. I don't want us to lose sight of both goals. Protect trees, where there seems to be a zero-sum game. Solar farms do eliminate CO2, trees eliminate CO2, but it's also protect neighborhoods. We didn't include Fruit Street. I'm fully on board with Fruit Street. It was just an oversight on our part. But some of the other properties that were mentioned, I think are also neighborhood properties. And I would really resist, just because there's no trees, that it's a proper place for a solar farm, because there are neighbors and there are trees right on the edge. It's not just a save trees initiative. It's a save trees and save neighborhoods initiative.
Thank you.
Hello again. Gail Danahy, 25 East Main Street. I own 36 acres next to the solar farm on Lumber Street, and I would like to connect a solar farm there. Now, you were talking about not having any other choices. I've been approached by a couple of developers, so yeah, I do have a choice. I can develop it into house lots if that's what you want to do, or I could do a solar farm, or I could leave it as is, or I could clear cut it, because I own it and I can do whatever I want. So if I want to clear cut it, that's my prerogative. You want to pay my taxes on my property and tell me what to do, that's your prerogative. I believe in people's rights to their property, and that's just a personal opinion. So I agree with Jane and Frank. But I would like to be part of this. There already is a solar farm that we'd like to connect to. I believe that's a better use of the land than having houses there and generating, more issues for the town. With kids in school, it would also, generate some revenue for my kids. So I would love to be part of this. If you could amend it to include my 36 acres.
Which parcels are yours?
Appreciate that.
Which parcels?
That's right, yep. Now go
Say it
north.
again.
No, I think it's actually.
It's,
Yeah, no, go north, yep,
there you go.
yeah. Yeah,
These two parcels.
Okay.
so it is in a residential area, but right now, I have a dilemma with people coming onto my property and using it as their own. I stopped a couple of ladies and said, hey, what are you doing? Yeah, I'm walking my dogs. Where do you live? I live in Franklin. And I said, what are you doing here? Well, I come over here to walk my dogs. I said, you're on private property. No, I'm not. I said, yeah, you are. She said, no, I called town hall. They even knew the parcel, and they said it was okay to walk my dogs there. I said, well, tell everybody not to walk your dogs there, please. It's my property. It's being used by four-wheelers. People are cutting trees down so they can make a better path so they can use their four-wheelers. Someday I'm going to be sued by somebody getting hurt on my property. And
That isn't something we can fix, but I get it.
No, but people say they don't want it in their backyard because they want to use my property to walk their dogs, to, look at nature. It's not their property, and it's a problem.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nation.
Hi, Ron Nation, 43 Smith Road. I'd like to take you up on your offer to be added to the map. There are three parcels. They abut up to Whisper. Whisper Way are the two lots that are served by a common driveway on Whisper, and then and then it goes back. There's another large lot here, it's 26 acres. And then there's another 5-acre lot down here, which butts up to Valleywood. And it's a large parcel.
We don't have a
It's
picture of it.
Yeah,
It's in the letter.
Yep, it is in the.
If you go to the letter from Mr. Nation, there's a image of it there.
But I was wondering about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't know if these do you any good. So it's a large parcel, it's heavily wooded. There's one borderline that's pretty much covered with a wetland, runs around here, so that would be a buffer there. The other thing you'd be buffering would be Route 495. I'm not sure how much of a buffer 495 means, but there's certainly plenty of room to do that. Then there are 2 houses that I would retain ownership of in Whisper that I wouldn't do a buffer for them, but I could certainly provide a buffer. And again, the Valleywood Inn, I built most of the houses in Valleywood, and I'd be happy to provide a buffer for them as well. A buffer where, not a 50-foot or 100-foot, but something meaningful where they're not going to be looking at solar panels. So anyway, I think it's a great site. It's right alongside the largest site you've got, which is 495. Got to cut trees. Now, if you're going to put them on top of buildings, you have to cut trees to build a building. So,
We understand. Okay, so 3 parcels.
Yes. And
Behind Whisper Way, along 495, it's just for my own benefit, as I'm writing the note, next to Valleywood. How many acres?
It's approximately 30.
30 acres of heavily wooded land, right? Okay, thank you, I have it.
35 maybe.
35, okay, all right, we're not,
They're listed, John. I sent the letter.
we'll find out.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, yes, sir.
Hi, Tom Shambo, 15 Wilson Street here in Hopkinton. I just really have 3 minor points. First of all, I wanted to ask about Fruit Street. I appreciate some of the board members bringing that up. Second one is I appreciate all the conversation about carbon offset, but nobody's talking about oxygen offset. Trees produce oxygen, and not too many other things do. So clear cutting of trees, I'm not really supportive of. And then the third point, so I'm supportive of the map and the ability of people to add more parcels to the map. But I'm wondering, some of these projects have already been completed. Some of them are in process, and some of them have a special permit. Would the board consider adding the limits of the work to those that have already been done or that have a special permit so that it delineates a little bit more, this big orange chunk is all solar overlay versus this is the solar overlay and here's what's been approved?
So let me just ask a clarifying question. Do you mean not to add any property like along 495 and only keep it to the areas that have been approved? No, what, I'm sorry. So
just to show on the map where a project is already finished.
So color code it so we know what has been approved, what is installed, what is new. Okay,
So the people who
thank
will be
you.
voting on
I
it
gotcha.
May would have a better sense for
Yeah, I appreciate that.
what's going on. Thank you.
Through the chair, I think one of the things is like some of the properties, like this map is delineating the whole property boundaries as approved, but each property only has, they have setbacks, so the actual solar installation is maybe say 75% of the whole parcel or something. So I think that was, I'm trying to interpret what he was meaning, but like, not saying it could be fully built out to 100% if it's only 75% of a parcel today.
The zoning is fixed though.
Based on parcels.
Right. Based on parcels.
And there's also the map.
I want to comment about that,
itself.
though. Okay. What he was
Hold on to it, okay.
Yep.
Scott Ober, Fawn Ridge Road, one of the major abutters to the proposed Franklin Road solar farm. Our neighborhood takes great exception to the fact that this area would make it onto this map. It seems the methodology is, we don't understand the methodology, because this is residential. It is 30 acres of clear cutting potentially, and we are very opposed to it. And sitting here tonight, listening to the board discuss this amongst yourselves even, it seems there's a lot of different viewpoints on this, and we are now discussing a petition to vote on a moratorium on solar farms. And, excuse me, we're gonna need the 200 signatures apparently to have a special town meeting, but we are going to be doing that. And I believe a lot more information is needed prior to just rubber stamping these projects.
So, do you want to propose, this map, a lot of questions are asked about it being final, and it's not final till it's final.
I understand that.
So do you want us to consider, and this is possible, to consider not including the Liberty Mutual property? Because zoning is zoning, that doesn't affect, let me just say this, if at town meeting, we vote this map and we have excluded the Liberty Mutual property, right? And it is not zoned under the solar overlay district, it does not affect the permitting process that is in front of us. They are grandfathered into the current zoning, and they are still allowed to pursue the permits. I just want to make that clear.
No, I'm aware of that.
Okay.
But that doesn't speak to the moratorium potential.
We're not talking about the moratorium, because that's you guys are bringing that forward if you bring it forward. But my question was, do you want us to consider taking the Liberty Mutual property off the overlay?
Of course.
Okay.
And Tom did send that letter in. He's one of the other major abutters that John mentioned, and he lists out a ton of concerns. And our primary concern, one of the primary concerns is we are all on well water in that area, and we have no idea what the long-term effect of having this large-scale solar farm in our backyard will do to our drinking water. And I don't believe anyone in this room could answer that question, because I don't believe it's been studied. And I just want to leave you with one thought. 50 years ago, everyone thought asbestos was okay too. And today, different opinion on that. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, Sam Documents, 8 Erica Drive. A question following up on John Ritz. I am a butter on the property for the DOT.
Where are you, sir?
It's 8 Erica Drive.
Say your address again, I'm
8
sorry.
Erica Drive.
Okay, yep.
And it's all wetland. So why is that being included? Can't build on it. I couldn't even extend my deck 2 feet towards the wetland when I wanted to replace my deck. So why would that be included?
So zoning does not contemplate wetlands. Zoning the wetlands would be an additional layer of regulation that any developer would have to address. That's the only reason, right? So we don't zone.
Still have to go through an approval process.
Yeah, we don't zone around wetlands, right? This is just underlying zoning. It's an overlay district, but it is what is allowed by you to be the property to be used for.
Okay, and still has to comply with all the
Yes.
wetlands and environmental
Yes.
issues. Okay, question number 2. When a solar project goes in, does each project have to go through an approval process?
Yes.
To
A commercial
setback
project.
and sight lines and buffer zones? Because I heard comments from some people that the current project we have in town, the residents who abut that property are not happy with the buffer zone between their property and the solar cells.
Yeah, and last year we added some zoning, language to our zoning, making it possible for us to beef up screening. It is, it's a challenge, but we did make that change last year to increase our ability to be more purposeful about screening requirements for year-round screening.
Next, I think people are a big proponent of solar. If it's done properly and doesn't decrease someone's property values, or sitting on their porch and looking out to see their nice solar farm in their backyard instead of the woods and the wetlands.
So I just want to make sure you understand, and everybody understands, that we don't have the authority to contemplate property values, and there are probably lots more noxious uses that are allowed on people's property. So that isn't something that we can regulate. We do, however, are very sensitive to the fact that this is a commercial use within a residential zone, and we're trying very hard. What we're trying to do is take solar as much as possible, commercial solar, out of the residential areas, so it's not as impositional. That's the hope.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Sandra Whitman, 12 Valleywood, I guess we're neighbors, same area. I was just wondering what factors you consider when you're trying to determine whether a parcel is appropriate for this use in particular. I'm hearing, what does it look like? For us, in that neighborhood, we're near 495. So there has to have been some PhD student that did their dissertation on how much sound from the highway gets how far, depending on how many, what woods are there. So, it may be that that neighborhood wouldn't see it, but how do we calculate how much quiet we're losing by clear-cutting areas near a neighborhood, not just the visual? And just a personal note, we moved here about 1.5 years ago, and I wasn't as concerned about the house as I looked at the neighborhood, and I looked at the satellite image, and I saw all of these trees, and I'm like, okay, we'll fix the kitchen, I don't care, look at the trees, So it does impact property values in a way. I don't know how that's assessed. If you say the house is worth X amount because I'm in the middle of these walking paths and now it's louder, and how that should be considered, I guess
It's an excellent point that I don't know if it was particularly considered. It is part of it is certainly part of the equation. Trees are a very effective sound buffer.
Okay. Well, I would be concerned that would be considered.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point.
This is one of the reasons that we were looking just at the median, and not at the median of 495. Granted, that would still eliminate some trees, but it wouldn't eliminate trees on the outer borders of 495.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Point.
Hi, Rob Stretche, 31 Valleywood Road. Same thing, similar, actually. I was going to bring up the noise being there, that I can see 495 over the Ron Nation land that is back there, or those, whoever owns them right at the moment, from a tax perspective. And that the Mass DOT, again, there's also pipeline, natural gas pipeline that runs through there, as well as other right-of-ways through there. So I don't know that, can you zone on top of those right-of-ways that are a very large pipeline? It's the one that runs all the way over to Elmwood.
Yeah, so we can zone.
Okay.
There are implications. I don't know if you want to.
So just for an example, the Franklin Solar property has an easement for the natural gas pipeline that Eversource is running to Ashland, and that is zoned agricultural and professional.
Okay. What about watershed? And the entire area back in there is all watershed area?
So zoning doesn't necessarily contemplate the natural resources. It's just a use restriction for an area. There are requirements that are on top of that. So the Water Resource Protection Overlay District is technically a zoning district, but it does encompass certain water resource areas. And any development that's within that meets certain criteria requires a special permit from the Board of Appeals. So in terms of wetlands, there's Concom review. In terms of water resources, there's a zoning board review. And then there's also the special permit review process for the planning board for any zoning, any solar development that's proposed. So in terms of zoning, it's kind of a general area. And then once you actually make a proposal, you get into the nitty gritty with the other reviews.
But wouldn't it make sense to kind of map those two together and have interaction between the two groups so that you're not zoning something for one way, where then we have to come here and argue about the zoning when the water resource, well, I don't remember which planning board does that one, I can't remember.
So the Water Resources Protection Overlay District restricts certain uses. I don't know if solar is one of those uses.
Yeah.
So
Like commercial applications might be, right?
I'd have to look.
It depends, right? It depends. Yes, but for example, the Water Resource Protection Overlay District covers most of the downtown, but uses that are already there, like the gas stations, they would never probably be permittable going forward in the future, but they're there now.
Well, I'll give an example, like to the gentleman who was talking about, we don't know the long-term implications and the well water and other things, because we're all well and septic back in that area as well. So from a perspective of, hey, what is this going to do when I start putting these lines in the ground and I start putting these panels that are made mostly in China right at the moment, unfortunately. But, you know, again, the materials that come off of that, and I can't even go put fertilizer on my lawn, but we're going to go and put these inorganic panels up over wetlands in a water conservancy.
So the Board of Health, this is when it gets super fun. The Board of Health protects private wells, and I think the DEP protects public water supplies, and there probably is a pretty rich amount of information that we could investigate on that. But I think these are excellent questions, and I think solar panels today are largely, we just permitted something very near the Whitehall Brook, which is the feeder to the town's aquifer. And the information that we were provided was that solar is a very compatible use adjacent to that, just for your information. But these are all excellent questions, and they're all different boards and purviews. Zoning is different than the Board of Health's process or the DEP's process, but they all layer over in a permitting process.
Can I ask one last question? We're saying that right now the entire town is orange. So this says that if somebody wants to go to Mass DOT or to Ron Nations and put a commercial lot in there, and those are orange, they are pre-approved by the town to go and do that, or they still have to come through?
So no, so what that means is, and I just want to say one thing, we're over time already, so we're not going to keep building the line over here. We are going to continue this hearing, okay? What Mr. Barker is saying is that this commercial solar properties, the zoning covers the entire town. So if we had an overlay district that was orange, the entire town would be orange. That doesn't mean that anybody can put it anywhere. They have to come here to go through this process. There is some pretty flexible authority from the state on down to try and advantage that particular kind of development. That's the reality we're in. And for the most part, we all celebrate that reality. So solar is seen as a really good thing. We're trying to sort of decide where our good things go so that we don't lose our other good things, which many of us consider trees to be very good things, or neighborhoods that don't have commercial establishments smack dab in the middle of them or right next to them.
So I guess the second part of that question was, if this goes, say you get your 2/3 at town meeting,
yep.
This is the orange that's there, the person still has to come forward here to still get the permit though?
Yes.
Just making sure that
Yes.
hasn't changed?
Yes.
Isn't changing like this?
Yes. Right.
If I may answer his question, because one question you didn't answer.
Hold on. What?
There's one question you didn't get to that he had. This board has, our town bylaw has very strong provisions in it. Every of the projects that we've approved has a bond and money for when the project ends or it's dangerous or anything's wrong with it, the money's there to take it down and make sure it's safe. So it's not, there's not leaking or anything. It's just solid glass, solid chemical components in the glass. And if any of them breaks, there's money there to handle it.
Okay, having lived in Arlington where we had GE and others we ended up with a football field over that Superfund site basically, and having grown up in New Jersey and seeing Superfund sites down the street.
We have Superfund sites in town.
Okay.
Want to see
So we're gonna,
more creative.
we actually have to move forward. I agree with your, your right to raise your concerns, sir. Yes.
Thanks. Barry Rosenblum, 10 Briarcliff. I had a question and then a comment.
Yep.
Is there a minimum acreage for a commercial definition?
I believe it's 3 acres.
3 acres in any of the overlay?
Excellent question.
Current in the bylaw, there's
Residential 3-acre minimum for commercial definition?
not necessarily residential, just 3 acre, a 3 acre lot size. I believe it's 3 or 5, I can't remember off the top of my head.
So as far as the town meeting goes, we got all the eggs in one basket here. Is there any plan for an amendment that's drafted by the group here that could be supporting the problem you might encounter in getting this approved through discussions and lineups at microphones?
So part of this process is to help us sort of shape. This is like a microcosm of what we hope to expect, although we very often draw people who are particularly interested. We wouldn't typically have an amendment. We would hopefully have an article that is shaped in the way that we thought best captured what would be something that the town might best consider and possibly vote on. That's the process. That's what we're trying to do here. But of course, on the town meeting floor, anything can happen. People can propose amendments from town meeting floor. So I just want to be clear that, the process is not fixed. We will certainly hope to be able to answer questions, anticipate questions, have made decisions on some of these properties, whether they stay in or they are added in before town meeting, yes.
I was thinking more along the lines of further strengthening your existing bylaw as an amendment. If this doesn't go through, then consider some wording as a standby that would add more control in your permitting process as a standby.
So we bump up against the state's guidelines that are intentionally meant to support commercial solar.
And through the chair, I think there would be a problem with not advertising that article. That would have to be a floor amendment, and so the board wouldn't be able to contemplate and just have it ready. It would have to be something that a citizen would bring up, because it hasn't been advertised.
So it could be presented by a citizen? Okay, that sounds fair.
But I don't think that would not be successful this year, because it wouldn't have been advertised on the warrant, and that would be considered outside the 4 corners of the article. That would be an embellishment on the idea. So in that case, if anybody proposed
Give the
it.
town attorney something to say that.
It sure would. It sure would.
But through the chair, our general feeling is we don't have control to change our current effectiveness or control over the current bylaw. That's our belief.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that somebody couldn't do the research and figure out if there was room there, I think. Yeah. Hi.
Chris Cochio, 10 Erica Drive. A little bit of a question around the candidate parcels. We heard earlier from Mr. Barker who mentioned that, a couple of the major priorities around this was to protect trees and protect neighborhoods. I'm a butter to the Salt Barn property, 495 West Elm over there. And heavy dense neighborhood and heavy dense trees. To my neighbor Sam Doknovich, Erica, who mentioned a lot of that as wetlands. I understand the purview of the board here, and that it's not something we can comment on. But those major criteria around protecting a neighborhood, heavy dense, protecting trees, that parcel is fully treed, and the largest benefit it provides, I believe, to the neighborhood is sound suppression. And
That's the 3 parcels?
well, that was just brought tonight to be added. I'm talking the larger property. Property. So right up to 495 and westbound, where the salt barn is, or the DPW.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked.
So the state has a salt barn there. So we deal with, still have significant residual noise in 495. We also have residual noise anytime there's a storm from the salt barn with those trucks going nonstop 24/7 through there. Not to mention the lighting that is on that site as well, which is, even with the tree cover, is still bright and has a glow over it. So similar to other gentlemen I talked about requesting a potential exclusion, I would like to ask you folks to think about excluding that parcel as part of this for those 2 reasons. You can take that into consideration. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I have a follow-up question? Yeah, to John. John was saying that, this is all in one parcel on the GIS, is that right?
Correct.
Is there any way that we can shade this differently without doing it
So
through that?
that's going to be a question for IT. I don't know what abilities they have in GIS. If they have, and this is get a little technical, if they have ArcGIS or ArcMap, they could edit the shape files that go along with it. If they don't, and they're just using the, I forget what, People GIS or whatever GIS the town uses, that ability is limited, and we'd have to probably go outside to actually edit the shape files. So I'd have to talk to them. I don't know what they can do.
So we could change the map, but just.
We can change it, but it might be technically difficult.
But
Okay.
through the chair, Rob's point earlier was that not every bit of every parcel is going to be used. So it's just an overlay, and then within that overlay, there are some areas that can be used and some areas that can't be used.
Yeah, we just wanted to know what our capability was within that question.
So just to reiterate, the intent was to grab the 495 corridor parcel and use the median for solar. That is just owned by the same owner, technically part of the same parcel. It was not contemplated by Zach to be used for solar. It's just,
that's how
I don't have the technical ability to take that piece off.
Just one comment before we get to the next speaker.
Yes.
So, just food for thought, at the next meeting, I'm going to suggest that we remove the entire 495 corridor, and we can discuss it then, because what I'm hearing from all the neighbors, and what I'm thinking about now is, the tree is the buffer, so, for the 495, so why should we be allowing to remove the trees easily and put solar panels there? So, I think it's something we should discuss in the next meeting.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jean Kaminsky. I'm at 31 Cross Street, which is right on the corner of the Liberty Mutual property. Not opposed to the solar farm particularly, or solar in Hopkinton. I worked for the state energy office at one point, so I was big on the renewable side. But I do have questions, some of them particular to the Liberty project, Liberty Mutual project. One is concerned about the runoff from the clear cutting, and I heard somebody speak at the last hearing about bad soil at the Legacy property, and whether that has been resolved in terms of the Liberty Mutual property.
So that's a question that would be better asked at the public hearing for that solar project. And they've been continued to March 20th. April 13th, thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Other issues of concern to me are decommissioning. Is that part of proposal, generally speaking, the solar projects?
It's addressed to him.
And particular to the Liberty project, we have a proposal, I guess from Eversource, for the pipeline construction to come through that same property. We have Legacy Farms, at least 2 construction companies going great guns, building in the same area with the pipeline, and now the solar project. My concern is that there's nobody looking out for that, and I fear a bad outcome at some point, that somebody could
make a mistake on one of those projects underground and affect the plant. I see that Olympic flame now and then, and I say, oh my God. So who in the town is overseeing all of that?
So they're all separate projects, and we are, right? We permitted the pipeline expansion. We're part of permitting the Legacy Farm, certainly, and we are considering the permitting at Liberty Mutual. The best way for you to have that concern addressed is to bring it up during what is now an ongoing permitting process for the Liberty Mutual property. It's a little complex, but that's where you should ask your question to see if we can untangle that for you.
So somebody from, I'm not sure which company or which project, was saying that they were not able to communicate effectively with Eversource.
Yeah.
So.
It's a common problem.
And then finally, well, there's certainly traffic and construction traffic that continues to build in that little area.
Yeah.
But who gains the economic benefit from the energy produced
On the
at that
commercial,
project or all of these solar projects?
whoever owns it.
Okay.
Yeah. So very often, I would imagine the property owner, if they remain a property owner, they benefit, and the lease, and the company that leases the property and installs it, they benefit.
Okay. And if the renewable credits go away, do we have a plan to manage that in the long term?
It's an excellent question, which I don't know the answer to.
If the SREC program is stopped in Massachusetts, I mean, that's a hypothetical, but if that were to stop, they would probably stop operating the solar field, and then they would either have to take it down, or the decommissioning bond would be used to take it down.
That's it for now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Once it's built, it's built. I mean, they'd still be making money.
Last call. Yep.
Hi, I'm still Ted Barker. I'm still at 75 Grove Street. I'm also on the Conservation Commission, and so for everyone worried about wetlands, I am deeply concerned about wetlands. Of course, the makeup of boards can change, but in the 3 years I've been on the board, nothing has unified the board, I think, more than protecting wetlands when solar projects have come around. We are very, very, very strict, and we've established a precedent, so even if the board changes, the level of strictness for how much the wetlands can be violated for these projects. So if that's a concern, zoning and conservation are two different maps, but the Conservation Commission is protecting wetlands tooth and nail.
Okay. So we are going to have to call it a night and have this discussion again. Yes?
Just one thing, if we're gonna consider other parcels, we should confirm that now so that we can have the proper
That's a
notification for
really
when we
good
continue
point.
the
Yep.
the hearing.
Yep. Yep.
I think we should notify butters on all the ones suggested for addition. They could always be removed, but I'd rather notify the butters than they not be needed.
I agree.
So, do we wanna just go through the ones that we have here,
We
that
have-
are not already considered?
So we have the Fruit Street property. We have the Danahy parcels on Lumber Street.
There's another piece in there, Ben Churko, 147 Lumber, that sliver.
You know what, Ben, I'm sorry, excuse me, you actually have to come forward, introduce yourself. And folks at home can't hear you, so that's all right.
Ben Churko, 147 Lumber, and when Mrs. Danny was up, that sliver that I talked about that's in the middle of hers, that's the one that's mine.
It's yours.
Right.
Okay.
Right, it's not
Close
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to know where they are. Where is it off of?
Nancy Lane.
off Nancy Lane. It's that piece right now where the cursor's on.
Yeah. Where's Nancy Lane?
Down Charlottesville.
The circle to the right,
Eric's on it, so.
somewhere in there.
Little dead end there?
Yeah.
Right in there, right in there. That's Fancy Lane.
So is it just this parcel that would be included?
And the one that,
And the other one.
And the other one.
That one's his, the rectangle's yours, right?
Rectangle inside of it, too.
And the larger one around the rectangle is Danahy's.
Yep, got them, two there.
So Danny is one parcel,
Danahy is one parcel, Churco is one parcel, right?
and we're adding both still.
Yes.
Just for purposes of noticing people. The 3 parcels that connect Whisper Way and Valleywood along 495 that Mr. Nation mentioned.
You said Fruit Street already?
Yeah, I did. That's a removal, people have already been noticed.
Where's that?
I think that's it, that's what I have.
I would like to add YMCA and workman's camp, workman's training camp.
So, that meeting that we didn't have anything on, I recommend that's what we talk about that night. Is that April?
27th.
Should we also move to the middle school
Right?
auditorium?
No, that's too late.
That's too late. I'm sorry, say it again. What did you say?
I said, should we move to the middle school auditorium to discuss this?
Which is covered in solar panels.
Get all the abutters.
What is that parcel that you're talking about, Frank?
Laborers training.
Laborers training, thank you.
It's a good point, through the chair, it's a good point, Gary, like, there's gonna be a lot of people,
It's actually no joke.
there are, like, once you notify abutters and the number of parcels we're talking,
Big parcels that have a lot of abutters.
big parcels that have a lot of abutters, it's gonna be highly.
I'm sorry to interrupt, may I?
No, hold on one second, I'm gonna get to you. Yep. What do we have on the first meeting in April? And what's the date?
April 13th.
April 13th. Hold on, yeah.
Right now, we only have. I believe we only have Seaboard Solar.
How fitting. There you go. Okay, all right, April 13th. Yes, sir, please.
Hey, I'm Inspector Chuvenpath. I recommend maybe some criteria for the selection of the parcels. I think what we've heard a lot today is some concern about noise, some concern about very close to or abutting neighborhoods, cutting of trees. If there's some maybe criteria outside of the ones that the folks have already come up and sort of volunteered to have discussions about, maybe just setting that would be helpful, especially when you're going to have a lot of people coming in and asking a lot of questions if we go one by one. If there's a high level criteria for how you're selecting them first, it might be an easier discussion overall. And then you can also preserve the fact that we don't want to cut down trees. We want to make sure that our water's clean. We want to make sure that if there's any long-term effects to our children or overall health, that you guys have already kept that in mind and set it up front so that we don't have to be worried about those things as best as you can.
So, can I make a point?
Yeah.
I think we're opening up a can of worms by allowing any additional properties.
I do too.
I think we have a process in place, so if somebody wants to get on that map, they should apply for a solar permit before a town meeting. If not, they have to go if this passes. If not, they have to go through the town meeting.
So, I mean, that will be the case, right? I'm not sure the best process. We don't ever help ourselves by trying to keep people out of the conversation. And yes, that is the process, right? If this map goes through, whatever the map looks like, it will be the map, and if people have not applied ahead of time, they will find that they can't apply afterwards.
I just think it's very subjective, and to everybody's point, it's to be favoritism, and I don't see a need to be doing it. Just my opinion.
Don't see a need to be doing,
Adding more
considering
properties other than,
properties.
and even the color coding we were talking about, I wouldn't do color coding. To your point, they're grandfathered in. So you apply for a permit or you don't.
People don't understand that color coding will help.
It's a matter of just
I mean, I'm not gonna argue that, but the point is they're the same, right? Whether it's already there. We have nothing like this to help us stop. So they're going to get approved.
Just a quick
Yeah.
process, just a quick process
Sure.
question. So for people that didn't show up tonight that think, oh, you know, I might want to add my name to the map, can they still write to the principal planner? Or is that deadline gone, John?
There's no deadline.
There's no deadline. There's no
That's what
deadline,
it's a
right? But
process
what
question.
we're talking about right now is the feasibility or even the sensibility.
But if they
of
want to
just-
get their name on that
I'm
map.
sorry, you interrupted me. If we're talking about right now is whether we even want to entertain that conceptually, right? Is whether we just want to open it up and have anybody add parcels.
To that point, my comment of removing all 495 would apply as well. They're not applying for it. I mean, why add it? Just have the properties that are there, or from now to town meeting.
So that is,
I'm just,
I know.
So just from a timeline perspective, I think we do have some timeline restrictions here,
Yeah, we
because
do.
if we're gonna add a parcel, then we have to notify, and that notify is 2 weeks ahead.
That's right.
So I think the reality is that, I'm not sure the exact timing, but at some point in time, we can't take new additions
That's
to
right.
it.
That's right.
And I'm just wondering, just to try and keep this manageable in some capacity, I'll throw out an idea here, but I wonder if it's worth us taking a quick straw vote on which parcels we would want to include for the next hearing, and then we curb it there. So, I mean, we had proposals for 4 primary chunks, and you know, that just might help provide some direction and clarity for the next hearing, instead of just opening up the floodgates to everything.
Agreed. Does that sound like a process that works for the board? We haven't really had a chance to discuss any of them fully.
Just a straw vote.
I think it's 10:30.
Yeah, I don't know what we would be voting on.
I know.
Just like clear.
I kind of like the contribution of creating some kind of high-level discernation of how to go about deciding what's appropriate and what we want and how we want this map to look. And I just don't think we have that right now.
I'm just worried about the timeline here. So we have 3 meetings before town meeting.
Yep.
If we don't add anything now, we could add the March 23rd, and then we could notify before the 13th, I guess.
Yeah, but we just talked about adding them, and so that we can notify right away.
But we didn't decide to actually add them, right?
But
We just
but
talked
we-
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we didn't
But we
vote.
talked
We
about.
haven't voted.
Okay.
But we're adding them for discussion purposes, you know, so that they can be notified, so that we can discuss it at our next meeting. Yeah.
So I just want to share with people that this is the challenge, right? So there's this overlay, there's this zoning that everybody, that we put into place, whoever we were, and they elected not to try and decide where solar might be appealing and where it might not be appealing. And that is the central task of what it is we're trying to do here, without, picking fights with everybody about their property rights. We're trying to find a sensible path forward so that we don't find ourselves the solar farm capital of the world. Yes, sir.
Bill Calvario, 39 Valleywood.
Yep.
We would talk about adding, but also subtracting the 495 corridor.
I do have that on the list, but for noticing people, we wouldn't have to notice people. They've already been notified that that's under
Well, it
discussion.
hadn't been coming up after the discussion.
Yes, I understand. Yes, ma'am.
Denise Cochio, 10 Erica Drive. I also concur that we need to make sure you capture the exclusions that were recommended earlier as well.
Yeah.
And I think just in general, I'm opposed to the board taking this proactive view. I think it sets the commercial development up for a perfect bullseye of where they can actually target development area that I think is unfair. I also think that at the end of this meeting, it feels very rushed about like, what are we going to add in? What are we going to add out? With the goal of meeting, town meeting or what have you. It just feels like this isn't ready for prime time right now, frankly, and I just have a lot of concerns about that.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment, please.
Hold on.
I've been
Okay.
holding on.
and you're gonna hold on just another little while, because we're late, okay? So we need to have a process. We should, vote whether we are gonna contemplate additional parcels and notify all those people. And we should vote when we're going to have our next meeting and where. And is there any other top-level process question?
A comment about top-level process.
Okay, perfect, but hold on. I'm gonna ask Mr. Barker Hook to jump in on that too, but what's your comment?
Like Mr. Ted Barker Hook said, I was on the Conservation Commission too. We do have a very strong Conservation Commission. We do have a very strong planning board. We have a very strong bylaw. An example of that, this board gave the largest fine for tree cutting in town history.
It doesn't have anything to do with
Of
this.
$9,000. There's a project on Saddle Hill, as an example of high-level process, that clear cut. We gave them fines because of scenic roadway bylaw, which we enforced. We worked with the developer to improve the process for the remaining 6 or 7 properties. So if you look at Saddle Hill, the first 4 projects at the beginning of the street are very clear cut. The developers paid the fine. The remaining properties have a lot of trees, has the greenery and frontage that we want the town to look like. So this board can work with the developers, with the power that we have for each of these solar projects that are up there. We've done that. We've done the screening. We've done a lot of oversight. We've faced legal barriers, legal challenges doing this, but we've hung it together and we've done these things. I don't think that we need any overlay to give us more power and restrict everything. I think that this board has enough power as it is and can use it wisely.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will entertain somebody's motion on those parcels, or,
So I guess it's not so much a motion, but
okay,
my proposal would be that we add to the discussion the Fruit Street parcel, the Whisper Way parcels, the Nancy Lane parcels, and at this point that we do not add the laborers training camp or the YMCA, given that we haven't had any other substantial requests to do so through this process.
all right, so, yeah, let's make it a motion,
Okay.
yeah.
I would, yeah.
Do you want to have an official vote? I mean, are you then having official vote recommending this map?
Recommending that we
With those
notify
parcels.
others of those 4.
That we
I don't think
notify
you need
them.
a vote for that, though.
Okay.
But we need a consensus, I guess.
Consensus, okay. So the recommendation is the Nancy Lane parcels, the Fruit Street parcels, the Whisper Way parcels, and the,
Street, Whisper Way,
Lumber Street?
no, that's Nancy.
Lumber Street.
Just
three.
It's 3, right?
Yes.
It's the Whisper Way parcel, the Nancy Lane parcels, 2 different owners, and the Fruit Street parcel, and not laborers training or the Y. I'm amenable to that.
And to remove 495 or no?
So we can talk
TBD.
about that, we don't have to
I think we
notice
still need to
that.
decide, yeah, so.
Yes, so we have the question of removing the Liberty Mutual property. Somebody asked about removing the area where the salt barn is, the state property somebody asked about, and the 495 somebody asked about. So those are, but those don't have to be noticed to additional people.
So I am against that idea, but I'm probably alone.
Against the idea of adding
Yeah, adding any.
any. All right. So, I am in favor of, how many people are in favor of having the adding to the conversation and noticing abutters of Fruit Street, the Nancy Lane parcels, and the Whisper Way parcels? I am in favor of that. So that's 6. Okay, so we're gonna do that. But the question is still about, the map is far from decided. And we are going to continue this public hearing at, to what date and time?
So, sorry, before you move on to that, just as a timing thing, if we notice the people for these lots, it's likely not going to be able to get done by the 23rd, because we'd have to get the abutters list, we'd have to mail them out, and then we'd also have to notice a new hearing, which has to be 2 consecutive weeks. So I don't think that's going to be done by the 23rd, just timing wise. So if we wanted to do it for the 13th, we could do, the timing works. However, we wouldn't be able to add any more parcels to the map. We'd only be able to take parcels off
Right.
at that point.
Right.
So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah. So April 13th. Yes,
I think that would be the
I think it's the only thing that works.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't want to be able to discuss it. I know we can't discuss the extra parcels at the next meeting, but discuss some of the other issues. Because we continued the other zoning until the 23rd.
Right, so I guess the other question that I would have to find the answer to is, if you put new parcels in, that could possibly be a new hearing for everything. You'd have to have a whole new hearing, not just 2 separate hearings, one for the ones that are currently advertised for this, and then the additional parcels. So you may be able to continue talking about these parcels that have been noticed at the 23rd if you want to, and then the new parcels at the 13th, and the parcels that are currently advertised on the 13th.
Or we could just talk about all of them on the 13th.
Which is
Correct.
cleaner to me.
Correct.
Just one other thought, I wonder if it's worth, and this might be the cart ahead of the horse, but at the 23rd meeting, it might be worth us just aligning and providing a little bit more clarity around criteria for what's being considered
That is a
here.
really good idea,
So I
actually.
think that's a good point that someone made.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. If we talk, if we put criteria conversation on the meeting for the 23rd.
Comment?
Yes.
I just want to make one additional point that maybe it's already been said and realized, but the fact that we're just looking at adding properties is making us look like we're last minute rushing, and if.
It's part of the
just
process,
my
Dave.
opinion- My opinion, no.
Yep.
Let me continue. If we did only list the properties that have already been applied for, it would be a done deal, and we wouldn't look like we are going last minute to right before, because I just think this could be used against us in the meeting, and my fear is that it will all be shot down because we're not prepared, and we'll be in the situation for another year.
Yep.
And the fact is, somebody made a point that we've done a good job so far. I totally disagree, because we can only vote on what we have, and we're like 6 for 6. Anybody that comes in for a solar project is going to get it.
So I appreciate your point.
Yeah.
I think that I feel like we have to have the conversation, and we don't have time to have it tonight. So and because it's zoning, people whose properties are being contemplated or who are abutting those properties have to be noticed. So this is the challenge of this work. I also fear that we will be too harsh and too close-minded, and we'll fail because we haven't considered other people's feedback.
To the chair, I think it's just not to reiterate this over again, because I know it's late, but I think the high-level criteria helps us solidify our reasoning for what we have and what the potentials of the other property are. So I think that if we create a basis that we all understand and can wrap our heads around, then these other parcels will kind of fit in to how that all is going to work. But I just don't feel comfortable without that high level of criteria to identify these properties at this time. But maybe April 13th, when we've sort of had a chance to filter out this criteria, I'll feel more comfortable.
When we get there, I will be, through the chair, I will be very interested in the criteria, because what is a brown area? Oh, I have 6 feet of brown, 6 feet of trees. I mean, it's just going to be very subjective.
So I think that we're going to hear from Zach.
Clarification, what are the properties where we decided to add at the end of the whole tally? What are the properties?
Fruit Street,
Fruit Street.
Nancy Way,
Wait, which is?
and Whisper Way.
No, Nancy Lane and
Nancy
Whisper
Lane
Way.
and Whisper Way.
So that's 3?
in Lumber Street.
Yeah, but
Well,
there's-
no.
Separate parcels.
Yeah.
It's really four properties.
It's
Nancy's
the way
including
it's
the
labeled.
Churchos?
Yes. It's, they're
Three
kind of
areas, four
joined.
properties, I think.
Through the chair, can I make
Yes.
just one final comment?
You sure can.
So people have talked about the 495 corridor in previous discussions, since most of you weren't here. Like, we don't think, as a board, we discussed it. We didn't think we had legal authority to not include it because it's owned by the state. That was our prior discussion. It was owned by the DOT, and we didn't think we had authority to remove it. So that's why it's here. And there's been some debate, like everything that gets approved for solar has to come before the board. As a board, we have fundamentally no authority to prevent solar farms. So if you're looking for the planning board to prevent solar farms, that's not possible. Like, we can basically say there needs to be screening, there needs to be flowers, there needs to be fences, there needs to be setbacks, but every project that's come before us gets approved because we have no legal authority to stop it. So if there's not a solar overlay district, it's just going to be, everyone is going to be basically flow through our approval process and be approved. So that's the facts.
I disagree.
So just, we're not gonna, we are gonna keep talking about this, just not tonight. So,
Adjourn?
no, we're going to continue this. All right, so we are continuing this public hearing. I'll entertain a motion to continue this public hearing until, did we say April 13th?
So moved.
Second,
Sorry, where are we? That meeting is currently slated for the conference room in Town Hall, which I don't think is gonna be able to accommodate the number of people that will be attending it.
Teeth.
So I'm wondering if it's possible, I don't know if we can clarify this now, but I'm wondering
Have
if
to.
either HCAM Studios has more capacity than this
Not
one?
really.
No, you don't think?
Conference room at Town Hall, what,
The select board meeting room.
the senior center's better.
Senior centers, it's available.
So is the thought we're expecting a bigger crowd now?
If we notice a bunch of people, that's my thought.
Sorry. It's late.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Actually,
Can
we
we
don't
find out
need to
if the
specify,
senior center-
do we need to specify the location
Yes,
tonight?
yes.
We do.
Date and place and
Place.
time.
Center
I think
Bay.
it's gotta be here because you can't reserve any
We're
other.
not here, though. We're not here.
Oh, we're not here. Oh, that's even.
I don't think you need to do a place, I think just a date certain.
Yeah, date.
I don't think you just need to specify the place.
Was it 23rd, April
Date and time,
23rd?
I'm quite sure. Sorry. Date and time. We have to have a, we have to,
7:30, so.
There's something else going on here?
all right, so we should look at a place, potentially.
Doesn't look like there's any other meetings on that day, so
Can I-
hopefully the senior center is open.
Can I contribute one thing, though? Is there a way that we could have sort of an administrative conversation about what our criteria is going to be on the 23rd?
I think we said
That's what we
Yes.
talked about.
Oh, okay.
Because that's
All
not a
right.
public hearing.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what
Okay,
we talked about.
cool. All right, so it's on the agenda. It'll be on. Yes.
When do you have to notice this?
It's 2 consecutive weeks prior to the meeting.
After the 23rd, potentially?
What do you mean?
No, we can notice them starting tomorrow, right? 'Cause we,
I mean, could you wait till after the 23rd? No.
State's gonna be on lockdown.
You
No, we wouldn't have to worry about it.
could, because you could notice it on the week of the 30th and then the week of the 6th. Off the top of my head, and because it's almost 11 o'clock, I can't remember when the last notice needs to be, if it needs to be a week in advance or 2 weeks in advance. I'd have to look.
And I don't know if that really is necessarily.
So the other consideration, and not that it really should matter, I believe we'd have to notice everybody again, even the ones that were noticed already, plus the new ones.
So if that's the case, then we could decide on the meeting location,
On the 23rd.
or do we need to decide the meeting location in a public meeting? Yeah,
No.
so literally it could be on Wednesday. John could figure out where the best place is to host, to have that meeting, and then all those notices get sent out, so everybody that's impacted by it is aware of where that meeting is.
Wednesday, 2 days from now.
Since we're noticing everybody anyways,
But I think we have to continue it to a location.
You have to continue to a date certain.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to continue this particular public hearing to April 13th.
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Yes, but just a reminder that we're going to speak criteria on the March 23rd.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, you're up.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
As far as notifications.
Aye. All those in favor? Aye.
Trying to keep it.
Is there any reflection in our budget that at some point we would become overdrawn in our